Where is she? The company is in trouble. Quick, come here, we can't do this without you. Forget her, I broke up with her. Dad, it's me, I need your help with something, just in case. We were on a company trip in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, for 2 nights and 3 days, but on checkout day, something felt off. I was the only one at the entrance, so I asked the hotel staff what was going on. They told me some surprising news. Feeling uneasy, I decided to put my secret plan into action for the sake of the company. My name is Madison Carter. I'm 25 and single. My family includes my dad, mom, and me. I've had a comfortable life growing up. My mom has always been a stay-at-home mom, which surprises my friends because that's not very common anymore. My dad's job has always been unclear. Even when I asked my parents, they were vague. But during a family dinner after I graduated from college, they finally told me the truth. They said, "We've been unclear about your dad's job, but we've had a comfortable life because he works hard as an investor. We wanted to tell you before high school, but your mom stopped me." I had a feeling about it. Honestly, I didn't know my dad was an investor, but when I saw how he talked about money and economic news, I figured he didn't have a regular job. My parents laughed at my calm reaction and said I was definitely their daughter. I laughed with them. Years passed, and now I work at a company. Luckily, it's a job seeker's market, so I could pick the industry I wanted. I chose IT because I thought it would be a good place for women and allow for remote work. However, I realized that if I worked from home for a few years after starting, I might fall behind my peers, so I decided to go to the office 5 days a week. My IT company is quite traditional and sports-oriented. Today, we're on a company trip to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. The hotel in the mountains provided a nice, relaxing space away from the city. The attendees included managers and executives who were enjoying themselves, drinking and chatting. Everyone was having fun, telling stories, performing tricks, and relaxing in hot springs. On the last day of our trip, something went wrong. I was left behind. I rushed to the front desk to ask about the bus I was supposed to take. The bus had already left. I asked the group leader if anyone had missed it, but there was no reason for the hotel staff to lie to me. So, the only person to blame was my senior, who had the wrong meeting time. The director had told me we would meet at 2 p.m., but the hotel staff said the meeting was at 10 a.m. and the bus left at 10:30. With no other options, I decided to call my coworker, Leanne. After the phone rang for a while, I got an automated message. "I'm currently unable to answer the call. Please leave a message after the beep." I tried calling her 5 times, but each time I got the same message. This meant she was probably on a plane and wouldn't be reachable for a few hours. This was a tricky situation. If everything had gone as planned, I would have been back by 1 p.m. tomorrow because I needed to attend a company meeting. The president had also told me I must be there. I wondered if something was wrong since the president seemed worried. Next, I decided to try calling the president. After the beep, I got the same automated message as with Leanne. Just to be sure, I called one more time. When I got the message again, I reluctantly left a message. "Mr. President, I apologize, but due to some circumstances, I was left behind on the company trip. I might not be able to attend an important meeting tomorrow, and it's not my fault. Normally, a working adult would pay for their own way back, but that's only if they were negligent. In this case, I didn't do anything wrong. I was set up by my senior. I want to complain about this. The problem is that I haven't upset my senior, so they either dislike me or just don't like something about me. It's probably a bit of both, but by leaving me behind, they are only creating problems for themselves. If the higher-ups find out, there will be chaos in the company. Honestly, I'm hesitant to rely on this for such a personal issue, but I need to take all possible precautions. So, I start calling the first person in my phone contacts. "Hello, Dan? It's me, Madison. I'm in a bit of an emergency." While I was waiting for the bus, I noticed 3 missed calls and 1 message on my phone. I remembered that Leanne wasn't there, so I played the voicemail. "Leanne, it's me, Madison. It looks like I was tricked by a senior and left at the hotel in Steamboat Springs. I have an important meeting tomorrow, but I might not be able to attend. Can you casually ask the senior why I'm not there?" I was confused about what was going on. Despite having an important meeting, it seemed like Madison was surprisingly absent. In fact, I was more flustered about it than she was. I needed to find out why Madison was left behind before worrying about my own feelings. A senior had just come to the bus, so I casually asked him, "It seems like Madison's missing?" "Oh, We left her behind. She must be panicking at the hotel right now, he replied. I couldn't believe this. Sure, he had been tough on Madison lately, but that was only because his work was worse than hers, and now he was laughing about it? I wanted to get angry, but I tried to stay calm and continued the conversation. Sir, Madison mentioned she had an important meeting tomorrow. What meeting is it? Is it something I should know about? I felt like the conversation wasn't going well. Could this be a big problem? I wondered. Sir, I'll check with Madison right away, he said, seeming flustered. He hesitated, looking around nervously. I quickly took out my phone and called Madison from a quiet spot. Hello, Madison? It turns out the senior was messing with you. Oh, I thought so. That's enough for me, thanks. Madison seemed pretty calm on the phone. I asked, the important meeting is the priority. Are you okay for the meeting? Oh, I've taken care of that, she replied. I had to rely on someone I'd rather not, but it's done. Her words were a bit vague, so I double-checked to make sure everything was okay. Are you really sure you're okay? Yeah, I'm fine, Madison said. I decided to trust her. I went back to my senior and shared what Madison and I had talked about. He seemed relieved and laughed, though it looked forced. Meanwhile, Madison was enjoying a luxurious day at the hotel in Jackson Hole, where she had been left behind. She had informed her coworker, Leanne, about everything. Madison sent a message to her boss, who reluctantly used the insurance she didn't want to rely on. With everything settled, she felt there was nothing left to do except get back at the senior who had tricked her. So, she decided to enjoy her day. She could charge the extra night at the hotel to the company or pay for it herself if necessary. She couldn't let a day like this go by without enjoying herself. She went back and forth between the sauna, the outdoor pool, and the heated stone lounge until it was time for dinner. For dinner, she had fresh seafood from the Pacific, along with locally sourced vegetables and meat. The delicious flavors overwhelmed her, turning what started as her worst day into the best one. Suddenly, she was jolted awake by her boss's loud voice on the phone. Where are you right now? I'm at the Jackson Hole Hotel for a company trip. The boss understood her situation but fell silent for several minutes. Hello? Are you listening? She asked, but there was no response. Maybe he was in shock. Today is an important meeting with the company's rivals. I just got a call from the bank saying they might stop our loan. The company has been struggling with cash flow lately, so today's meeting is crucial. The boss sounded frantic. Even over the phone, she could picture his face going pale, and even the hair on his head turning white. With this incident, they might have to say goodbye to any remaining hair. Don't worry, Madison reassured him. I've taken the necessary precautions, I assured the president, who seemed to find some hope in my calm demeanor. We have insurance in place, so everything will be fine. More importantly, I need to discuss something with you about Mr. Wilson. After about an hour, I explained the situation regarding the company trip to the president. He was left speechless for a moment. It was understandable since an important meeting was scheduled for today, and the person who should be there was missing because of a prank. We'll make it in time for the meeting, and we have the worst-case scenario covered by insurance, so don't worry, I said, wrapping up the conversation before hanging up the phone. I was sure Mr. Wilson had received a stern talking to from the president. Now it was time to prepare to leave the hotel and catch my flight. I left the hotel, boarded the plane, and took a bus to the office, arriving just in time for the 2 p.m. meeting. As soon as I entered the conference room, I saw that the president looked like he was about to cry. The other participants who had arrived early were forcing smiles, but the truth was far from cheerful. If I had been late, today's meeting might not have been successful. I had known in advance that my father was involved in the loan situation, but I kept quiet because it wasn't something to share at work. However, after what Mr. Wilson did, I had no choice but to use it as my advantage. When I told my father about the situation, he said, "Your decision was rational and good, Madison. You sought the best outcome based on your own judgment. No parent would refuse to help with that." Honestly, I felt like I owed my dad a favor. As a working adult, I wanted to surpass my father, but I never intended to use him for my own gain. I genuinely liked everyone at my workplace except for Mr. Wilson, which is why I wanted to help my colleagues this time, even if it meant bending my own rules. Now that the meeting was over and I was exhausted from flying in from Jacksonville, I mentioned, I'd like to go home early today, not really meaning it, and left the conference room. By the way, I hadn't heard about Mr. Wilson's situation. I wondered what happened to him and if he would come to work tomorrow. As I pondered these thoughts, I headed home. The next day, I saw Mr. Wilson. He still looked gloomy. When I asked Leanne, she said the president had scolded him severely. On top of that, his planned promotion was cancelled. It felt like adding insult to injury. I approached him, pretending not to know anything. "Let's do our best again, Senior Mr. Wilson," I said, hanging his head in disappointment. He could only muster a weak reply. "It's better than being fired," I added. "This will be a lesson for him in the future. Now, let's focus on today's tasks."
The Plaza Hotel glittered like a fairy tale, crystal chandeliers casting golden light across marble floors. I adjusted my emerald silk dress, purchased specifically for today, my sister Olivia's wedding, and checked my reflection in a gilded mirror. The doorman had given me an odd look when I arrived, as if questioning whether I belonged in such an opulent setting. If he only knew. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Where are you? The ceremony starts in an hour." I took a deep breath and headed toward the grand ballroom, the gift in my hand. A small, wrapped box felt heavier than its actual weight. Inside was a key, but not just any key. The key to everything Olivia had ever wanted. Growing up, Olivia had always been the star, the perfect daughter, the stunning beauty, the social butterfly. While I buried myself in financial reports and business plans, she floated through life on charm and looks. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" Mom would ask. "Olivia never has trouble making friends." Now, at 28, Olivia was marrying Bradley Thompson IEV, heir to the Thompson Hotel Group. The wedding was splashed across every society page in the city. The perfect couple, they called them. The merger of old money and new beauty. If they only knew. The bridal suite door was cracked open as I approached. Inside, I could hear Olivia's voice, sharp with command. "No, no, no. The flowers are all wrong. Do you know how much we're paying for this? Fix it." I knocked softly. The door swung open to reveal my mother, her face tight with stress, despite perfect makeup. "Finally," she said, looking me over critically. "At least you dressed appropriately this time." "Catherine," Olivia's voice rang out. "You're late. I need you to run down and check on the place cards. Make sure they're done right." I bit back a response. Even on her wedding day, Olivia was giving orders. But I had long practice at keeping my thoughts to myself. The ballroom was a vision in white and gold, flowers cascading from every surface. I approached the welcome table where the place cards were arranged in perfect rows. The calligraphy was flawless, each name written in golden ink. I found my card near the back and froze. Instead of a table number, mine read, "Hallway seating, service entrance." "Oh good, you found it." I turned to see Olivia standing behind me, resplendent in her designer wedding gown. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "There wasn't room at the family tables," she said sweetly. "You understand, don't you? We had to seat all of Bradley's important connections first. There's a nice chair set up by the service entrance. You'll still be able to hear everything." The carefully maintained mask I'd worn for months cracked slightly. "By the trash cans, Olivia?" "Really?" She shrugged, adjusting her veil. "Guess you don't count as much as real family. Besides, it's not like you contributed anything to this wedding." If she only knew how wrong she was. About everything. I looked down at the small gift in my hands. Inside was the key that would unlock the truth about her precious Bradley, about the Thompson Hotel Group, about everything she thought she was marrying into. I had spent the last year working silently, systematically, uncovering every secret, every lie, every hidden debt. The Thompson empire was crumbling, and Bradley knew it. He needed this marriage, needed the connections and social status Olivia would bring to save his family's failing business. What he didn't know was that I had already bought most of their debt through a series of shell companies. What no one knew was that while they were planning this lavish wedding, I was planning something else entirely. I had intended to wait until after the ceremony, to do this quietly, privately. But standing there, holding my hallway seat assignment, something shifted inside me. "You're right," I said, my voice steady. "I don't count as real family. I never have." Olivia's smile widened. "Exactly. So you'll be fine by the service entrance." I picked up my place card, tore it in half, and dropped it on the floor. "No, I won't. Excuse me." "I'm leaving," I said, turning toward the door, "and I'm taking my gift with me." "Whatever," Olivia called after me. "It's not like you could afford anything worth having anyway." I paused at the doorway, looking back one last time. "You might want to check Bradley's phone, particularly his messages with someone named Diana at Goldman Sachs. They're very illuminating." Olivia's face went blank. "What are you talking about?" "Ask him about the leveraged buyout and the hidden debts, and why the SEC is investigating his father." The color drained from her face. "How do you? That's not..." I smiled, a real smile this time. "Goodbye, Olivia. Enjoy your wedding, while you can." As I walked away, I could hear her heels clicking rapidly across the marble floor, no doubt rushing to find Bradley. In about 10 minutes, she would discover that his phone was locked, and he wasn't answering her calls. In 20 minutes, she would learn that Diana from Goldman Sachs had just sent an email to the entire Thompson board, detailing every fraudulent transaction she'd uncovered. And in 30 minutes, she would realize that her perfect wedding was about to become something else entirely. I stepped out into the sunlight, pulling out my phone. Time to set everything in motion. "Execute Plan B," I texted to my team. "And make sure the SEC gets those files within the hour." The response came immediately. "Already done. Thompson stock is starting to fall." I slipped into my waiting car, finally allowing myself to relax. The doorman who had questioned my belonging was now holding the door with careful deference. Word traveled fast in certain circles. As we pulled away from the plaza, I could hear sirens in the distance. Right on schedule. The real wedding gift was about to be delivered, and it wasn't the key in the small box I still held. It was the key to understanding that actions have consequences, that appearances aren't everything, and that sometimes the person you dismissed might just be the person who brings your whole world crashing down. My phone buzzed again. A message from Diana. "SEC agents just entered the plaza. Should I activate the final protocol?" I smiled, thinking of Olivia's face when she realized what was really happening. "Yes," I typed back. It's time everyone knew the truth. The car turned onto Park Avenue as behind us. The perfect wedding dissolved into perfect chaos. My car had barely reached Madison Avenue when the calls started flooding in. First Mom, then Dad, then a stream of family members I hadn't heard from in years. I silenced them all, watching the city blur past my window as centuries of carefully maintained appearances crumbled behind me. "Turn on CNBC," Diana texted. I pressed a button, lowering the partition screen in the car. The financial news channel sprang to life, and there it was. Breaking news scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Thompson Hotel GROU under federal investigation. CEO arrested On FRAUDCHRGE. My phone buzzed again. Olivia this time, her text almost incoherent with rage. What did you do? I could picture the scene unfolding at the plaza. SEC agents in dark suits moving through the crowd of bewildered wedding guests. Bradley being led away in handcuffs. His father already in custody in the hotel lobby. Olivia, still in her perfect white dress, watching her perfect day shatter like a crystal glass, dropped on marble. Miss Harrison? My driver's voice cut through my thoughts. We're here. I looked up at the gleaming office tower that housed Harrison Global Investments, my company, though few people knew that. I'd built it quietly over the past 5 years, hidden behind layers of holding companies and proxy directors. Diana was waiting in the lobby, tablet in hand. Her sharp suit and precise movements reflected none of the chaos we just unleashed. The Thompson stock is in free fall, she reported as we stepped into the elevator. Down 60% and still dropping. Our positions are exactly where we want them. I nodded. And the evidence packets? Being delivered to every major news outlet right now. The full story will break within the hour. She paused. Your family's reputation won't survive this unscathed. They sacrificed that reputation themselves, I said quietly. They just don't know it yet. My office occupied the top floor, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. I deliberately kept the space minimal. No family photos, no personal touches, nothing to suggest who really ran one of the city's most powerful investment firms. Pull up the security feed, I instructed Diana. Multiple screens lit up, showing different angles of the Plaza Hotel. The chaos was spreading. Police cars lined the street. Reporters were arriving in waves, their cameras flashing like strobe lights. And there, in the middle of it all, was my sister. Olivia's perfect composure had cracked. Her veil was askew, mascara tracking down her cheeks as she screamed at anyone who would listen. Mom stood beside her, face ashen, while Dad argued with what appeared to be federal agents. Your sister's trying to call again, Diana noted. This time, I answered. How could you? Olivia's voice was shrill, hysterical. Wow, you've ruined Evie or waiting. No, Olivia, I replied calmly. I just exposed the truth. Bradley's family has been running a Ponzi scheme through their hotels for years. They were using your wedding, your connections, to bring in new investors before everything collapsed. You're lying. Bradley loves me. Bradley loves your social status and your father's contact list. Check your phone. I just sent you proof. Every fraudulent transaction, every hidden account, every lie, he told you. There was a long pause as she presumably looked at the documents. But how did you? Her voice had lost its edge, reality finally starting to sink in. Remember when you told me I'd never amount to anything? That I was wasting my time with investments and financial analysis while you were building the perfect life? I allowed myself a small smile. It turns out all that boring work gave me exactly what I needed to see through Bradley's facade. The SEC, she whispered. That was you. I've owned most of Thompson's debt for months. I knew everything, Olivia. Every scheme, every fraud, every secret meeting Bradley had with his mistress while planning your wedding. Mistress? Her voice cracked. Diana isn't just from Goldman Sachs. She's been working for me, gathering evidence, recording every conversation, including the ones where Bradley laughed about how your wedding would save his family's empire. A choked sob came through the phone. Why? She managed finally. Why today? Why not tell me before? Would you have believed me? Or would you have run straight to Bradley, warning him, letting him hide the evidence? I paused. And as for why today? Well, you made it clear I didn't count as family. So I stopped acting like family. Through the security feed, I watched my sister crumple onto a gilt chair, her perfect wedding dress pooling around her like broken dreams. What happens now? She whispered. Now, the Thompson empire falls. Bradley and his father go to prison. And you get to experience what it feels like to be the one nobody wants to associate with. You've destroyed us, she said, but the fight had gone out of her voice. No, Olivia. You destroyed yourselves. I just decided to stop protecting you from the consequences. I ended the call, turning to Diana. Start the next phase. She nodded, fingers flying over her tablet. Within minutes, news alerts began popping up on my screens. Harrison Global Investments announcing the acquisition of key Thompson properties at fire sale prices. Our company stepping in to stabilize the situation and protect jobs. My phone buzzed again. Dad this time. His message was different from the others. We need to talk. I know what you've built. I stared at the message for a long moment. Of course he knew. Dad hadn't built his own business empire by being stupid. He must have figured it out. Perhaps even suspected what was coming. Diana, I said quietly, get me everything we have on Harrison Industries. She looked up, startled. Your father's company? But that wasn't part of the plan. Plans change. I turned to look out over the city. It's time for phase 2. Because destroying Bradley Thompson wasn't the end game. It was just the beginning. And my family was about to learn that the daughter they dismissed had become something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. A woman with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The sun had set over Manhattan by the time my father arrived at Harrison Global's offices. The city lights sparkled below like scattered diamonds, a fitting backdrop for what was about to unfold. Impressive, he said, stepping into my office. His bow tie was undone, hanging loose around his neck, the only sign that today's events had affected him. Though you might have chosen a less dramatic way to reveal yourself. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. Would you have listened to any other approach? He sat, his movements measured. This was Thomas Harrison, the titan of industry, not the father who had overlooked me for decades. How long have you been planning this? Which part? I turned my monitor so he could see the financial data scrolling across it. Taking down the Thompsons? Building Harrison Global? Or proving that your least favorite daughter might actually understand business? Catherine. His voice carried a warning note, the same tone he'd used when I was young and dared to challenge him. It didn't work anymore. 5 years, I said, since the day you told me I didn't have what it takes to run Harrison Industries. Remember? Business requires instinct, Catherine, not just books and spreadsheets. He had the grace to wince. I was trying to protect you. No, I corrected. You were protecting Olivia. Everything was always about protecting Olivia. Her feelings, her future, her fantasies about marrying into the perfect family. Diana appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. The final numbers are in. Thompson Hotel Group has filed for bankruptcy. Our acquisition of their prime properties is proceeding as planned. Thank you, Diana. I watched my father's face as the implications sank in. Oh, and could you pull up the Harrison Industries portfolio analysis? His head snapped up. What? Diana's fingers moved across her tablet, and new data filled my screens. Harrison Industries' complete financial history, every transaction, every acquisition, every hidden deal. You didn't think I was only investigating the Thompsons, did you? I kept my voice gentle. I learned from you, Dad. Always look at the bigger picture. Catherine, he started, but I held up my hand. 3 years ago, you started moving assets into offshore accounts. 2 years ago, you began liquidating major holdings through shell companies. Last year, you accelerated both processes. I met his eyes. You're in trouble. The mask of corporate confidence cracked slightly. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Harrison Industries is overleveraged. The market shift you bet against happened anyway. Now you're hemorrhaging cash and looking for a way out. I leaned forward. That's why you pushed so hard for Olivia to marry Bradley. You needed the Thompson connection to prop up your empire. He stood abruptly, pacing to the window. How did you find out? The same way I built this company, by paying attention to details everyone else ignored. I pressed a button on my desk, and more data filled the screens. Would you like to see what else I know? His shoulders slumped slightly. What do you want? Sit down, Dad. I waited until he did. I'm offering you a choice. Diana handed him a folder containing 2 documents. He opened it slowly, reading with the careful attention that had made him successful. A merger? He looked up sharply. You want to acquire Harrison Industries. Option 1. Harrison Global acquires your company at fair market value. You retain a position on the board, your employees keep their jobs, and the Harrison name stays intact. I paused. Option 2. I release everything I found to the SEC, and you face the same fate as Bradley Thompson's father. You wouldn't. I just destroyed my sister's wedding and had her fiancé arrested. Do you really want to test me? He stared at the documents for a long moment. And your mother, Olivia, will be taken care of. The merger agreement includes provisions for both of them. I softened my tone slightly. I'm not cruel, Dad. I just wanted you to see me. Really see me. I see you now, he said quietly. God help me, I see you. He picked up the pen Diana had placed before him, then paused. The timing of all this, Bradley, the wedding, this offer, you planned it this way, didn't you? I smiled. Like you said, business requires instinct. He signed. As Diana whisked the papers away for processing, my father remained seated, looking somehow both older and more alert than I'd ever seen him. What happens now? He asked. Now, you go home to Mom. Help her understand that her world hasn't ended, it's just changed. Help Olivia realize that there's more to life than appearances. I stood. And tomorrow you come back here, and we begin the process of saving everything you built. And you. For the first time, there was genuine curiosity in his voice. What do you get out of this? Besides control of one of the largest private investment firms in the city? I walked to the window, looking out at the empire I'd built while everyone was watching Olivia. I get the satisfaction of knowing that the daughter you underestimated now holds the key to your survival. He joined me at the window. I was wrong about you. Yes, I agreed. You were. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Harrison Global announces acquisition of Harrison Industries. Markets respond positively. One last thing, I said as he turned to leave. That chair by the trash cans at Olivia's wedding? It wasn't just an insult. It was the final test. If she had shown even a moment of kindness, of real sisterly feeling. I shrugged. This might have played out very differently. He nodded slowly. She failed the test. They all did. Every time. I sat back behind my desk. Good night, Dad. I'll see you at tomorrow's board meeting. After he left, Diana returned with a stack of papers requiring my attention. The merger would keep us busy for months, but that was fine. I had always preferred working to socializing anyway. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from Olivia. I'm sorry. For everything. Too little, too late. But maybe, just maybe, some good would come from all this. Maybe my sister would learn what I had known all along. That true worth isn't found in perfect weddings or social connections, but in what you build with your own hands and mind. I turned back to my work, the city lights twinkling below like stars. The daughter they hadn't wanted at the wedding now owned their future. The sister they had seated by the trash now controlled their fate. And I wasn't done yet. Not even close. Because success isn't just about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. And I had only just begun to show what I could do. Diana cleared her throat softly. The press is requesting statements about the merger. And your mother has been calling the office. I smiled, picking up the small gift box I'd intended to give at the wedding. Inside, the key gleamed in the evening light. No longer needed, but a perfect reminder of how far I'd come. Tell them, I said, that Harrison Global is just getting started. The city stretched out before me, full of possibilities. Sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served from the top floor of the building you bought, while no one was looking. And sometimes the sister they didn't want at the wedding becomes the woman they can't afford to ignore. My name is Alexandra Mitchell, and I learned early in life that some sisters aren't meant to be best friends. Sophia, my older sister by 3 years, made sure I understood that from the moment I could walk. Growing up, Sophia was always the star of the family. Straight A's, student body president, champion debater, she collected achievements like others collected stamps. Our parents' pride in her was matched only by their constant disappointment in me. Where Sophia excelled in public speaking, I preferred quiet research. While she dominated social circles, I spent hours in the library, studying patterns in law and business that others overlooked. Why can't you be more like your sister? Became the soundtrack of my childhood, playing on repeat at every family dinner, every parent-teacher conference, every holiday gathering. But what no one knew, what Sophia never noticed through her veil of superiority, was that I was building something. Something bigger than high school accolades or college acceptance letters. It started during my junior year of high school, while Sophia was celebrating her acceptance to Harvard Law School. I was quietly launching my first legal consulting business from my bedroom. Using online forums and anonymous profiles, I began connecting struggling law firms with the resources they needed to succeed. By the time I graduated high school, I had built a network of over 50 law firms that relied on my research and strategies. Of course, none of them knew they were working with a teenager. I just don't understand you, Alexandra. My mother sighed at my high school graduation. Sophia's going to Harvard, and you're taking a gap year to figure things out. What is there to figure out? I didn't tell them that my gap year was actually the first phase of my business expansion plan. I didn't mention that the modest savings account they thought I had was actually approaching 7 figures. And I certainly didn't reveal that 3 of the top law firms in Boston had already hired my consulting company, not knowing they would soon be working with their star student's little sister. Sophia thrived at Harvard, of course. Every holiday break brought new stories of her success, new reasons for our parents to beam with pride. Meanwhile, I built my empire in silence. When my parents pressed me about college, I enrolled in online business courses, letting them believe I was at least trying, while I orchestrated mergers and acquisitions through my growing network of shell companies. By the time Safi graduated from Harvard Law, I owned controlling interests in 7 major law firms across the East Coast. My company, Mitchell Strategic Solutions, had become the invisible force behind some of the most successful legal practices in the country. But on paper, I was just the quiet daughter who hadn't found her path yet. Everything changed the day Safia joined Preston and Hayes, one of Boston's most prestigious law firms. She didn't know that 6 months earlier, I had acquired it through a complex series of transactions. She walked into her first day of work, proud and confident, not realizing that her little sister was technically her boss. "You should see my office, Alex," she gloated during a family dinner. "Corner suite, full staff, partner track within 5 years. What are you doing these days? Still with that little consulting business?" I smiled and took a sip of wine. Something like that. The truth was, I was in the middle of the biggest acquisition of my career. Preston and Hayes was just the beginning. I was positioning myself to take over Blackwood International, the largest law firm conglomerate on the East Coast. The deal would make me one of the most powerful figures in the legal world, all before my 25th birthday. But Safia couldn't help herself. She had to maintain her position as the family success story. That's why, when I met James Walker at a charity gala, she tried to stake her claim. "He's from one of Boston's oldest families," she told our mother, loud enough for me to hear. "And he's looking for someone successful, accomplished. Not really your scene, Alex." What Safia didn't know was that James had met me 3 months earlier in my role as the CEO of Mitchell Strategic Solutions. He had been representing Blackwood International in the acquisition negotiations, not realizing that the powerful, elusive CEO he was dealing with was the same woman he was falling in love with. When James proposed 6 months later, Safia was livid. She had been dropping hints about her own interest in him, only to watch her underachieving sister snag one of Boston's most eligible bachelors. "It doesn't make sense," I overheard her telling our mother. "She's nobody in this city. She barely has a real job. Something's not right about this." The wedding planning became her obsession. She insisted on being my maid of honor, not out of sisterly love, but because it gave her access to every detail, every guest list, every moment she could use to dig into my life. What she discovered must have shocked her: the inconsistencies in my story, the mysterious meetings, the connections that someone with a little consulting business shouldn't have. She spent months gathering evidence, planning her moment of triumph. She chose our wedding day to spring her trap, not realizing she was walking into one of her own. The ceremony was perfect. Boston's historic Trinity Church filled with the city's elite, judges, lawyers, business leaders. Many of them were there for James, the respected attorney from an old Boston family. None of them knew that the bride owned most of their law firms. But as the minister asked if anyone objected to the union, Safia rose from her seat beside me, a wicked smile playing on her lips. Little did she know, I had been waiting for this moment. After all, some sisters aren't meant to be best friends. They're meant to be lessons in humility. If anyone knows any reason why these two should not be joined in matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. Those traditional words hung in the air of Trinity Church for just a moment before Safia stood up, her blue maid of honor dress rustling as she stepped forward. The smirk on her face told me she had been waiting for this moment. "Actually," she announced, her voice carrying through the stunned silence, "I have something to say." Our mother gasped. James squeezed my hand, but I remained calm. After all, I had prepared for this possibility. Before we continue this farce, Sophia declared, pulling out a folder from behind her bouquet, everyone here deserves to know the truth about Alexandra Mitchell. She opened the folder with dramatic flair. My sister has been lying to all of you. She's not the simple business consultant she claims to be. She's been operating under false pretenses, infiltrating law firms, manipulating her way into business deals. Murmurs rippled through the church. In the front row, our father's face had turned red with embarrassment. Our mother looked like she might faint. I have proof, Sophia continued, clearly enjoying herself. Bank records showing suspicious transactions. Shell companies leading back to her. She's been deceiving everyone, including her fiancé. She turned to James. Did you know your bride isn't who she claims to be? That while you've been working on the Blackwood International acquisition, she's been orchestrating it? I finished for her, my voice calm. Sophia faltered for a moment, but pressed on. She's not qualified to run any of these companies. She never even went to law school. You're right, I said, standing up in my wedding dress. I never went to law school. I pulled out my phone and opened an email. I was too busy building an empire. With one tap, I sent the email I had prepared. Throughout the church, phones began buzzing as Boston's legal elite received the notification. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced, as of this moment, Mitchell Strategic Solutions has completed its acquisition of Blackwood International. This merger makes us the largest legal services corporation in New England. Sophia's face had gone pale. What are you talking about? I smiled. You're right about one thing, Sophia. I'm not a lawyer. I own the law firms, including Preston and Hayes, where you've been working for the past year. The folder slipped from her hands, papers scattering across the church floor. That's impossible. You're lying. Am I? I turned to the assembled guests. Judge Harrison, would you like to confirm who owns controlling interest in your firm? Or perhaps Mr. Blackwood himself would care to explain who he's been negotiating with for the past 6 months. William Blackwood stood up from his pew. Everything she says is true. Alexandra Mitchell is the CEO of Mitchell Strategic Solutions. She's been the driving force behind the most significant legal industry consolidation in Boston's history. Sophia staggered backward. But you're my little sister. The underachiever. The disappointment. The disappointment who now owns the company where you work. I corrected her. Speaking of which, we should discuss your recent performance reviews. They're not very impressive. Our mother had found her voice. Alexandra, why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me? I asked. You were too busy comparing me to Sophia's Harvard degree to notice I was building something bigger than any law school could teach. I turned back to my sister. By the way, since you're so interested in exposing secrets, should we discuss what really happened with the Anderson case last month? The one where you claimed full credit for the settlement. Sophia's face went from pale to ashen. You wouldn't. The actual case files show that you barely contributed, I continued. In fact, your primary contribution was taking credit for work done by your junior associates, something that's become a pattern in your career. That's not true, she protested weakly. The records indicate otherwise, as do the complaints filed by your team, which have been sitting in HR, complaints I now own, by the way. James stepped forward, taking my hand. He was smiling. I should mention, he added, that as chief counsel for Blackwood International, I've known exactly who Alexandra is from the beginning. We met during the initial merger negotiations, long before that charity gala where you tried to warn me about her. Sophia looked around desperately, but she found no allies in the crowd. The city's most powerful legal minds were all nodding in recognition. They had all dealt with Mitchell Strategic Solutions, even if they hadn't known the owner's identity until now. "So," I said, straightening my wedding dress, "would you like to continue exposing secrets, dear sister? Or shall we proceed with my wedding?" Sophia stood frozen, her carefully planned moment of triumph transformed into her own public humiliation. Finally, she managed to whisper, "Why didn't you ever tell me?" "You never asked," I replied simply. "You were too busy looking down at me to notice I had risen above you." I turned to the minister. "Shall we continue?" But Sophia wasn't quite finished. As she sank back into her seat, she muttered just loud enough for me to hear, "This isn't over." I caught her eye and smiled. "Actually, it is. Check your email." As if on cue, her phone buzzed. Her eyes widened as she read the message. An official notice of her immediate termination from Preston and Hayes, effective that moment. "You can't fire me," she hissed. "I'm not firing you," I corrected her. "The evidence of your misconduct and credit theft is firing you. I'm just the owner who approved the termination." The minister cleared his throat, clearly unsure how to proceed after such drama, but I simply nodded for him to continue. After all, this was still my wedding day, even if it had turned into something more. As I stood there, preparing to say my vows, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in one of the church's stained glass windows. I saw not the quiet, overlooked younger sister, but the powerful woman I had become. The woman who had built an empire while others underestimated her. And as I looked at Sophia, now sitting humiliated in her maid of honor dress, I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't just success. It's success that no one saw coming. The ceremony continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. This was no longer just a wedding. It was a coronation. My parents sat in stunned silence, processing the revelation that their underachieving daughter was actually one of the most powerful people in the room. As I said, "I do," I couldn't help but think how fitting it was that my wedding day had become the day I finally stepped out of the shadows. After all, what better way to start a new life than by revealing your true power? But even as I celebrated, I knew this was just the beginning. Sophia's words, "This isn't over," echoed in my mind. She had always been competitive, vindictive. She wouldn't take this humiliation lying down. What she didn't realize was that I was counting on that. The reception at the Boston Harbor Hotel should have been the perfect celebration. Instead, it became the battlefield for the next phase of Sophia's war against me. I was barely through my first dance with James when my phone buzzed with urgent messages. Sophia had gone straight from the church to the media, attempting to spin a story about corporate espionage and illegal business practices. Mitchell Strategic Solutions built through deception. Read the headline she had somehow managed to plant in an online business journal. Harvard graduate exposes sister's fraudulent empire. I smiled, showing the article to James. He raised an eyebrow. "She really doesn't know when to quit, does she?" "No," I replied. "She doesn't." But I was ready for this too. I nodded to Catherine, my chief of operations, who had been waiting discreetly by the bar. She immediately began making calls. Within an hour, every major news outlet in Boston received a comprehensive press package detailing Mitchell Strategic Solutions' completely legal rise to power, including all regulatory filings and compliance records. But Sophia wasn't done. As guests mingled over champagne and hors d'oeuvres, she made her way through the crowd, whispering to key figures in Boston's legal community. Did you know she's been recording your private conversations? I overheard her telling Judge Harrison. Every law firm she acquired, she gathered dirt on the partners first. What she didn't realize was that each person she approached had already received a message from me, warning them about her desperate attempts to salvage her reputation. The breaking point came when she approached William Blackwood himself. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, her voice carrying just enough to draw attention. "I have evidence that my sister blackmailed you into this merger. She threatened to expose your offshore accounts." The room fell silent. Blackwood looked at her for a long moment, then laughed. "Miss Mitchell, or should I say, former Attorney Mitchell, your sister never blackmailed me. In fact, she was the one who helped me legitimize those accounts last year, saving my company millions in potential fines. That's why I agreed to the merger." Sophia's face turned red. But the documents I found were decoys," I interrupted, walking over. "I knew you were searching my office at Preston and Hayes. Every secret document you discovered was placed there specifically for you to find." "That's impossible," she stammered. "The banking records, the shell companies, all legal, all traceable, all part of legitimate business operations," I explained calmly. "Did you really think I wouldn't protect myself against exactly this kind of attack?" Our parents, who had been watching this exchange with increasing discomfort, finally approached. "Sophia," our father said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Enough." But she wasn't finished. She pulled out her phone, hands shaking. "I still have proof. Recordings of your meetings, documents I copied." "Actually," James interjected, "you don't. As chief counsel of Blackwood International, I should inform you that removing confidential documents from Preston and Hayes constitutes a serious breach of contract, not to mention a violation of the Bar Association's ethics code." Sophia's face went pale. "You wouldn't dare report me to the bar." "I don't have to," I said softly. "Your own actions today, attempting to disrupt a legal merger with false allegations, stealing confidential documents, trying to manipulate the media, those actions require me to report you. As the owner of Preston and Hayes, I have a legal obligation to do so." "You're bluffing," she whispered, but her voice trembled. I pulled out my own phone and showed her the screen. "A formal complaint to the Massachusetts Bar Association, ready to be filed. Last chance, Sophia. Walk away now. Leave Boston. Take the severance package I'm still willing to offer and start fresh somewhere else." "You're destroying my career," she protested. "No," our mother suddenly spoke up. "You did that yourself. All these years, you were so busy proving you were better than Alexandra that you never noticed she had actually become better than you." Sophia looked around the room, finally seeing the truth. The powerful people she had tried to turn against me were all nodding in agreement. Her attempted power play had backfired completely. "Fine," she spat. "You win. You've always been playing a longer game than me, haven't you?" "The difference is, I was playing to win," I replied. "You were just playing to make me lose." She turned and walked out of the reception, her blue dress disappearing into the Boston night. As the door closed behind her, I felt a strange mix of triumph and sadness. "Are you okay?" James asked softly. I squeezed his hand. "I am. It needed to end this way." Our parents approached, looking shell-shocked but proud. "We had no idea," my father said. "All these years. You saw what you expected to see," I replied. "Sophia was the star. I was the disappointment. It made it easier to build something extraordinary while everyone was looking the other way." The rest of the reception passed in a blur of congratulations and celebrations. But now people were celebrating more than just my marriage. They were celebrating the emergence of a new power in Boston's legal world. Later that night, as James and I prepared to leave for our honeymoon, I received one final email from Safia. "You've won," she wrote. "I'm moving to Chicago. But remember this, you taught me that appearances can be deceiving. One day, when you least expect it, I'll have built something of my own, and then we'll see who the real winner is." I showed the email to James. He looked concerned, but I just smiled. "Let her try," I said. "Building something real takes more than ambition and revenge. It takes patience, strategy, and the wisdom to know that true success isn't about beating others. It's about becoming the best version of yourself." 10 years later, I stood in my office at the top of the Mitchell-Blackwood Tower, looking out over Boston's skyline. The empire I had built had grown beyond even my expectations. Safia had tried to start several ventures in Chicago, but each had failed because she was still focused on competing with me, rather than creating something meaningful. Our parents had finally learned to see me for who I was, not who they had assumed I would be. And James had become not just my husband, but my true partner, in business and in life. On my desk sat a framed photo from our wedding, the moment right after I revealed the truth about Mitchell Strategic Solutions. In it, I'm standing tall in my wedding dress, power and confidence radiating from my posture. Safia is in the background, her face a mask of shocked realization. It serves as a reminder that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one you should watch most carefully. Because while some people spend their lives trying to prove their worth through words and showmanship, others build empires in silence. My phone buzzed. Another major law firm was ready to join our network. As I prepared for the meeting, I thought about how far I'd come from that overlooked younger sister. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just success. It's success so complete that it transcends revenge altogether. And sometimes the greatest triumph isn't in proving others wrong, but in proving yourself right. The empire I built wasn't just about showing up my sister or proving my worth to my parents. It was about creating something lasting, something meaningful, something that would outlive any family drama or personal vendetta. And as I sat down to sign the papers that would further expand my business empire, I couldn't help but smile. Because in the end, the quiet sister had roared the loudest, not through words, but through actions. Not through competition, but through creation. That's the thing about true power. It doesn't need to announce itself. It simply is. And that's a lesson Safia never learned. I should have seen it coming. The signs were there, scattered across months of subtle changes at Morgan Technologies. The way Robert Morgan, our CEO, started bringing his son Patrick to executive meetings. The way he'd interrupt my presentations to ask Patrick's opinion, despite his fresh out-of-college status and complete lack of real-world programming experience. But when you're deep in code, building something revolutionary, it's easy to miss the office politics swirling around you. My name is Michael Sullivan, and for the past 3 years, I'd been developing a predictive maintenance system that could revolutionize the manufacturing industry. Not just another monitoring system, but an AI-driven platform that could predict equipment failures weeks before they happened, potentially saving companies millions in downtime and repairs. It started as a small project, something I tinkered with during late nights when the office was empty. I'd spent 15 years in industrial automation, watching factories lose millions to unexpected equipment failures. I knew there had to be a better way. "You're onto something big here, Mike," Robert had said 2 years ago when I first showed him the prototype. His eyes had lit up with dollar signs as I demonstrated how the system had predicted a critical failure in our test facility 3 weeks before it happened. Whatever resources you need, they're yours. And he'd meant it. Back then, the company poured $2 million into development. I built a team, installed sensors throughout partner facilities, gathered data. We worked endless hours, fueled by coffee and the conviction that we were creating something that mattered. The system evolved beyond my wildest expectations. It didn't just predict failures, it learned, adapted, understood the unique patterns of each facility it monitored. The neural network I designed could detect subtleties that even experienced maintenance engineers missed. "This is impressive work," Patrick had said last month, hovering over my shoulder as I fine-tuned the core algorithm. "But wouldn't it be better if we simplified it? Made it more accessible?" I should have recognized the danger in his words. Patrick, with his fresh MBA and zero programming experience, had been appointed as Project Oversight Director 3 months ago. His suggestions always centered around making things simpler, more marketable, user-friendly, corporate buzzwords that masked his fundamental lack of understanding. "The complexity is what makes it powerful," I tried to explain. "The multi-layered neural network allows for—" Yes, he'd cut me off. "But think about the average user. They don't need all these advanced features. The average user, as if our clients, major manufacturing corporations with billions in equipment, or casual app users looking for a simple interface." Yesterday, everything came to a head. I was preparing for our biggest client presentation yet, a potential $50 million contract with Global Manufacturing Solutions. 3 years of work, countless sleepless nights, all leading to this moment. Then Robert called me into his office. "Mike, take a seat," he said, not looking up from his monitor. Patrick was already there, practically bouncing with barely contained excitement. "We need to discuss the project's direction." I felt a chill despite the warm office air. "The GMS presentation is ready to go," I said. The system's performance in their pilot facility exceeded all expectations. "About that," Robert finally looked at me, his expression carefully neutral. "We've decided to take things in a different direction. Patrick has some excellent ideas for streamlining the system, making it more commercially viable." "Streamlining?" I leaned forward. "Robert, the complexity is what makes it work. You can't just—" "Actually," Patrick interrupted, "we can. As the new head of development, I'll be overseeing all technical aspects moving forward." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "Head of development." Robert cleared his throat. "Yes. We feel the project needs fresh eyes, a new perspective. Patrick has an excellent grasp of market dynamics. He doesn't know the first thing about neural networks." I stood up, my chair scraping back. "The system architecture alone took a year to perfect. You can't just—" "We can, and we are." Robert's voice hardened. "The company owns all intellectual property rights. Your services are no longer required, effective immediately." I looked between them, Robert's stern face, Patrick's smug smile, and understood. This had been the plan all along. Wait until the system was built, then push out the builder. "Security will help you clear out your office," Robert added. "Patrick will handle the GNS the presentation next week." As I packed my things under the watchful eye of a security guard, I caught snippets of Patrick's voice from my former office, already on the phone with GMS. "Yes, we're very excited about the streamlined version we'll be presenting." They thought they'd won. Thought they could just take 3 years of my work, slap a new interface on it, and claim it as their own. What they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that I'd built something special into the system's core architecture. A small subroutine, buried so deep in the code that even a thorough review wouldn't find it. A feature that would activate exactly 90 days after any unauthorized changes to the core neural network architecture. I left quietly that day, carrying my box of personal items past curious coworkers. Let Patrick play with his streamlined version. Let him make his changes, thinking he was improving things. The clock was already ticking. 90 days until the GNS quarterly review. 90 days until they learned what happens when you try to simplify complexity you don't understand. 90 days until my code showed everyone exactly who its real creator was. Walking to my car, I couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the best revenge isn't an explosion. It's a carefully timed revelation. The countdown had begun. 60 days can feel like an eternity when you're waiting for justice. But when you're preparing to expose a multi-million-dollar fraud, time moves surprisingly fast. I spent the first week after my firing in a state of controlled rage, methodically documenting everything. Every email, every meeting note, every line of code I'd written over the past 3 years. My apartment's spare bedroom transformed into an evidence room. Walls covered with printouts and sticky notes tracking the project's evolution. Then came the message from Diana, my former lead systems analyst. "They're breaking it, Mike." Her text read, "Patrick's streamlining is destroying the core functionality. The test results are all over the place." I wasn't surprised. The neural network I'd built was like a delicate ecosystem. Change one part without understanding the whole, and everything falls apart. But I needed details. We met at a small coffee shop far from the office. Diana looked nervous, constantly checking over her shoulder as she slid a USB drive across the table. "Patrick's ordered a complete simplification of the interface," she said, disgust evident in her voice. "He's removing safety checks, bypassing validation protocols. Says they're unnecessarily complex." I picked up the drive, careful to keep my expression neutral. "How's the team taking it?" "Half have resigned already. The ones who stayed." She shook her head. "They're documenting everything, just like you asked." "But Mike," the GMS presentation. She hesitated. "What about it?" "They're faking the results. Patrick couldn't get the system to produce the predictions they promised, so they're manually entering false data. They're going to demonstrate a completely fabricated version to GNS." Perfect. Exactly what I'd expected them to do. Back home, I reviewed the files Diana had brought. Patrick had done exactly what I'd predicted. Stripped away the complex validation systems, removed the redundancy checks, simplified the neural network architecture to something he could understand and take credit for. And in doing so, he'd activated every trigger I'd hidden in the code. You see, the system I'd built wasn't just smart. It was self-aware in a very specific way. It knew its own architecture, understood its own complexity. Any attempt to simplify its core functions would be logged, documented, and stored in an encrypted partition that Patrick didn't even know existed. Every change he made was another piece of evidence, another nail in his coffin. 45 days before the quarterly review, I received another message, this time from Marcus in quality assurance. "Systems throwing weird errors," he wrote. "Random predictions, false positives. Patrick's blaming the hardware, but..." I smiled. The second phase had begun. The system wasn't just logging the changes anymore. It was starting to react to them. Subtle at first, just enough to create doubt. Through my network of former colleagues, I kept tabs on Patrick's increasing desperation. He hired external consultants, brought in efficiency experts, even tried to recruit some of my former team members who had quit. None of it helped. 30 days before the review, the system started showing its teeth. Critical predictions began failing spectacularly. Equipment that the simplified system declared perfectly fine would break down hours later. The neural network, its delicate balance destroyed by Patrick's improvements, was now demonstrating exactly why its complexity was necessary. But Patrick, backed into a corner, did exactly what I'd expected. Instead of admitting failure, he doubled down. "We've got the presentation data ready," Diana reported during another clandestine coffee meeting. "All completely fabricated. They're going to show GMS a perfect prediction record, claim the system is exceeding all benchmarks. And the real data?" She smiled grimly. "All safely archived, just like you asked. Every failed prediction, every false reading, every piece of evidence showing how they've destroyed the system's functionality." I nodded, feeling a strange calm. The pieces were falling into place. 2 weeks before the review, I made my move. An anonymous email to GNS's Chief Technology Officer. "You might want to ask for raw data during the quarterly review. The presentation numbers seem too good to be true." Just enough to plant a seed of doubt. 1 week before the review, Patrick made his final, fatal mistake. In a desperate attempt to fix the system's increasingly erratic behavior, he ordered a complete override of the core neural network protocols. "He's wiped out the original architecture completely," Diana texted, "replaced it with his streamlined version." And with that, the countdown entered its final phase. The hidden subroutine, dormant until now, had been waiting for exactly this moment. When Patrick erased my original architecture, he unknowingly activated the system's final protocol. In my apartment, I'd pulled up the secure terminal I'd maintained. A single command prompt blinked, waiting. I thought about all the nights I'd spent building this system, the pride I'd felt when it first successfully predicted a critical failure, the betrayal in Robert's eyes when he'd chosen nepotism over merit. I typed a single command: "Initialize protocol revelation." The terminal responded: "Protocol activated. Execution in 7 days." 7 days until the quarterly review. 7 days until Patrick would stand in front of GNSA's executive board, ready to present his simplified version of my work. 7 days until everyone would learn what happens when you try to take credit for someone else's genius. I closed the laptop and poured myself a drink. The system was armed, the trap was set, and all the players were in position. Now it was just a matter of waiting for the curtain to rise on the final act. The day of the GNS quarterly review dawned bright and clear. I arrived at Morgan Technologies headquarters at precisely 8:45 a.m., wearing my best suit and carrying a manila envelope. The security guard at the front desk did a double take. "Mr. Sullivan? I thought you." "I have an invitation," I said smoothly, sliding across an email printout. "From GNS's Chief Technology Officer, for the quarterly review presentation." He checked the paper, made a call, then reluctantly handed me a visitor's badge. "They're in the main conference room." I could feel the stares as I walked through the office. Former colleagues quickly looked away, some whispering behind their hands. Through the glass walls of my old office, I caught a glimpse of Patrick in a crisp new suit, frantically reviewing his presentation slides. The main conference room was already filling up. GNS executives in expensive suits mingled with Morgan Technologies' management team. Robert Morgan stood at the front, looking confident until he saw me enter. His face went through a fascinating series of emotions: shock, anger, fear, finally settling on forced politeness. "Michael," he said tightly, "this is a private meeting." Actually, a deep voice cut in. I invited him. James Wheeler, GNS's Chief Technology Officer, stepped forward. Given his role in developing the system, I thought his input might be valuable. Robert's forced smile became brittle. Of course. Though I should mention that Michael is no longer associated with the project. Yes, Wheeler nodded. So I've heard. Shall we begin? I took a seat at the back of the room as Patrick started his presentation. He'd clearly rehearsed extensively, smoothly moving through slides, showing perfect prediction rates, flawless performance metrics, and glowing testimonials. "As you can see," he said, clicking to a particularly dramatic graph, "our streamlined version has achieved a 99.8% accuracy rate in predicting equipment failures." "Impressive," Wheeler commented. "Could we see the raw data behind these results?" Patrick's smile flickered slightly. "Of course, though the technical details might be a bit complex." "Try us," Wheeler said dryly. As Patrick fumbled to pull up the data, I glanced at my watch. 9:27 a.m. Right on schedule. Every screen in the room suddenly went black. "Just a minor technical," Patrick started, but the words died in his throat as the screens came back to life, now showing a very different presentation. "Unauthorized architecture modification detected," announced the system's AI voice, the one Patrick had tried to remove. "Initiating comprehensive system audit." The screens filled with scrolling data, the real data, showing every failed prediction, every error, every simplified component that had compromised the system's integrity. But more importantly, it showed the original architecture, my architecture, and exactly how Patrick's changes had systematically destroyed its functionality. "What is this?" Robert demanded, standing up. "This," I said, speaking for the first time, "is what happens when you try to simplify something you don't understand." The system continued its merciless exposition. Split screens showed Patrick's fabricated results alongside the real performance data. Email threads appeared, documenting his orders to fake results and override safety protocols. "The neural network you tried to simplify," I explained, standing up, "wasn't just a collection of algorithms. It was a self-aware system designed to protect itself from exactly this kind of unauthorized modification." "You sabotaged us," Patrick accused, his face red. "No," Wheeler cut in. "He protected his work, and apparently just in time." He turned to face Robert. "We were prepared to sign a $50 million contract today. Now I'm wondering what else you've been lying about." Robert's face had turned an interesting shade of gray. "Now, James, let's not be hasty." "Actually," I interrupted, opening my manila envelope, "you might want to see these first." I handed Wheeler a stack of documents. The original system architecture, development logs, and proof of authorship. Also, evidence of how this streamlined version has already failed at 3 test sites, resulting in equipment damage that was covered up. The room erupted in chaos. GMS executives huddled around the documents while Morgan Technology's management team tried desperately to explain. Through it all, the system continued its presentation, methodically exposing every flaw, every lie, every corner cut. Patrick slumped in his chair, his carefully rehearsed confidence shattered. Robert stood frozen, watching 3 years of deception unravel in minutes. Wheeler finally stood up, silencing the room. I think we've seen enough. He turned to me. Mr. Sullivan, would you be interested in discussing your system, the real system, over lunch? GMS is very interested in working with the actual innovator behind this technology. I smiled. I would be honored. I gathered my documents, then paused at the door. Oh, and Patrick? The system's core architecture will fully restore itself in about an hour. Try not to break it again. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, contracts, and new beginnings. GMS not only signed a deal with my newly formed company, but also invested in expanding the system's capabilities. Several of my former team members, including Diana and Marcus, joined me in the venture. Morgan Technologies? They survived, barely. The scandal of the failed deception and Patrick's tampering cost them several major contracts. Robert took early retirement, and Patrick found himself working in middle management at a small software company, where I hear he's learning the value of thorough documentation. As for me, I learned some valuable lessons about trust, about preparation, and about the importance of building systems that can protect themselves. My new company's core value? Complexity isn't a bug, it's a feature. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about building something so robust, so intricate, that it can reveal the truth all on its own. You just have to be patient enough to let the system work. The neural network? It's still running, still predicting, still protecting itself. And every now and then, when I'm reviewing its code late at night, I swear I can feel it humming with satisfaction, like a watchdog that successfully protected its home. Because in the end, good code, like good karma, always finds its way home. 3 months after the GNSD presentation, I received an unexpected email from Robert Morgan. Short, just 2 lines. You built it better than I understood. I'm sorry we didn't see that sooner. I never replied. Some revelations speak for themselves. Sitting in my new office, overlooking the city, I often think about those 90 days of waiting, about the satisfaction of watching a carefully laid plan unfold exactly as designed. But mostly, I think about the lesson at the heart of it all. In the world of code, as in life, true complexity can't be simplified without consequences. Every system, every person, has layers of intricacy that make them what they are. Try to strip those away. Try to take credit for someone else's genius, and you might just find that the system has ways of fighting back. As for the original code, it's still out there, running in thousands of facilities, predicting failures, preventing disasters. Each installation carries a small signature, buried deep in its core. Complexity is not a bug. It's the feature that keeps us honest. Patrick never did figure out how to read that part of the code. But then again, he never really understood what he was trying to simplify in the first place. Some things, after all, are better left complex.
The first time I suspected Victoria Sterling was a fraud, I was standing in front of a supposed lost Vermeer in her gallery's back room. Something about the brush strokes didn't quite match the master's technique, a detail most would miss. But after 15 years of restoration work and art authentication, these subtle signs were as clear to me as fingerprints. Magnificent, isn't it? Victoria's voice carried that particular tone of manufactured awe she reserved for potential investors, recently discovered in a private collection in Amsterdam. I kept my expression neutral, though my mind was racing. The painting was good, exceptional even, but it wasn't a Vermeer. The provenance documentation she'd shown me earlier had gaps, convenient ones that any serious collector would question. But Victoria had built her reputation on finding lost masterpieces, and questioning her expertise at Sterling Fine Arts was tantamount to career suicide in the San Francisco art scene. My name is Margaret Foster, and for the past decade, I've divided my time between teaching art history at Berkeley and running a small authentication consultancy. My specialty: identifying forgeries that fool even the most sophisticated collectors. It's not the kind of expertise that makes you popular at gallery openings, but it's earned me a reputation for absolute integrity in a world where that quality is rarer than a genuine Da Vinci. The brush technique in the window reflection, I said carefully, it's interesting. Victoria's perfectly maintained smile tightened slightly. At 45, she was the undisputed queen of the Bay Area art scene. Sterling Fine Arts had grown from a modest gallery to a powerhouse in just 5 years, largely due to her uncanny ability to source overlooked masterpieces from private European collections. The technique is consistent with Vermeer's middle period, she said dismissively. The provenance documents confirm it. I nodded, but my mind was already cataloging the inconsistencies. The pigments looked period appropriate, but there was something about the craquelure, the network of fine cracks in the paint, that felt too uniform, too deliberate. Natural aging creates random patterns. This was almost engineered. I'd love to have my team take a closer look, I offered. Pro bono, of course. A find like this deserves thorough documentation. That won't be necessary. Victoria's tone cooled considerably. We've already completed all required authentication procedures. Of course they had, and I was fairly certain I knew who had performed them. Marcus Bennett, a once respected authenticator whose recent certifications had raised eyebrows among serious scholars. But questioning his credentials would mean questioning Victoria's judgment, and by extension, the legitimacy of her entire collection. I should have left it alone, should have nodded, smiled, and kept my suspicions to myself. But integrity has always been my weakness, or my strength, depending on how you look at it. The signature, I said, leaning closer to the canvas. The flourish on the V, it doesn't quite match his other works from that period. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Victoria stepped between me and the painting, her designer heels clicking sharply on the hardwood floor. Margaret, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. I know you mean well, but let's be clear. You're an academic. Teaching art history to undergrads is quite different from operating in the real art world. These pieces require discretion, understanding, a certain sophistication about how our world works. I understood perfectly. In the high-stakes world of fine art, questions about authenticity could sink million-dollar deals. Victoria wasn't just dismissing my expertise. She was warning me to keep quiet. Of course, I said mildly. I'm always eager to learn. Her smile returned, cold and professional. Stick to teaching, dear. Leave the dealing to professionals. That should have been the end of it. I should have walked away, focused on my students, my small consultancy, my quiet life of academic integrity. But 2 weeks later, everything changed. It started with a phone call from an old friend in Amsterdam. Michael van der Meer had been my mentor during my postgraduate work in art restoration, and his word carried weight in European art circles. Maggie, his Dutch accent was thicker than usual, suggesting agitation. Have you seen Sterling's new acquisition, the supposed Vermeer? I have, I said carefully, closing my office door at Berkeley. It's interesting. It's impossible, Michael said flatly. The provenance claims it came from the Backer collection, but I've personally cataloged every piece in that collection. This painting never existed there. My suspicions crystallized into certainty. Are you sure? Absolutely, and there's more. I've been hearing whispers about other pieces from Sterling Fine Arts, provenances that don't quite add up, documentation with convenient gaps. I sank into my chair, my mind racing. Have you spoken to anyone else about this? Not yet. But Maggie, if what I suspect is true, this could be one of the largest art fraud schemes in decades. After hanging up, I sat in my darkening office, staring at the art history texts lining my walls. If Michael was right, and I knew he was, then Victoria Sterling wasn't just selling the occasional questionable piece. She was orchestrating a massive fraud, one that threatened the integrity of the entire art market. But proving it would be another matter entirely. Victoria had connections throughout the art world, and her gallery's reputation seemed unassailable. More importantly, she had the one thing that gave her absolute power in our world: trust. Collectors trusted her judgment, trusted her authentications, trusted her to turn their millions into priceless masterpieces. I spent the next week quietly gathering information. My position at Berkeley gave me access to databases of art sales and provenance records. Nights that should have been spent grading papers were devoted to tracing the histories of Victoria's most prominent acquisitions. A pattern emerged, subtle but undeniable. Over the past 5 years, Sterling Fine Arts had sourced an improbable number of discovered masterpieces, each with documentation just solid enough to satisfy wealthy collectors, but with convenient gaps that would make true verification impossible. But I needed more than suspicions and database records. I needed proof. Concrete, undeniable evidence that would stand up to the intense scrutiny any accusations would face. That's when I decided to set up my own gallery. It wasn't as impossible as it sounds. Years of consulting work had left me with substantial savings, and I owned a converted warehouse space in Oakland that I'd been using for restoration work. More importantly, I had something Victoria couldn't buy: genuine expertise and connections with legitimate collectors. Over 3 months, I transformed the warehouse into the Foster Gallery of Fine Arts. It wasn't glamorous like Sterling Fine Arts, but it had something more valuable: authenticity. Every piece I displayed came with impeccable, verifiable provenance. Every authentication was performed with rigorous documentation. And then I began acquiring my own collection, pieces that would make Victoria Sterling take notice. It started with a legitimate early Monet, purchased from a private collector in Paris who trusted my reputation. Then came a small but genuine Degas, its provenance traceable through 3 generations of a single family. Each acquisition was carefully documented, each authentication performed with multiple independent verifications. Victoria noticed, of course. She sent her assistant to my opening night, then began showing up at the same auctions where I bid. I could feel her watching, assessing, probably wondering how a mere academic had access to such pieces. The trap was baited. Now I just had to wait for her to take it. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Through my European connections, I learned of a private collection coming to market in Vienna. Genuine pieces with rock-solid provenance, including an early Rembrandt sketch that would make any gallery owner salivate. I arranged to view the collection, making sure word of my interest reached Victoria's ears. The pieces were extraordinary, not just the Rembrandt, but several other Dutch masters, each with documentation that would stand up to any scrutiny. As I expected, Victoria appeared in Vienna 3 days after I returned to San Francisco. What she didn't know was that I'd already secured the collection through a private arrangement with the owner, an old friend who understood exactly what I was trying to accomplish. The next move was hers, and she didn't disappoint. "Margaret, darling." Her voice dripped honey as she swept into my gallery one Tuesday morning. "I've been meaning to stop by. Your little space is charming." I looked up from the catalog I was preparing, noting the calculated casualness of her $5,000 outfit. "Victoria, what a surprise." She wandered the gallery, making small talk about recent auctions and gallery openings. But I could see her eyes constantly returning to the photographs of the Vienna collection displayed on my desk. "I heard you were in Vienna recently," she said finally. "Interesting market there." "Very," I agreed. "Some remarkable pieces coming available." She picked up one of the photos, the Rembrandt sketch. "This is intriguing. You're pursuing it?" "Among others. The provenance is impeccable." Victoria set the photo down, adjusting her Cartier watch. "You know, Margaret, running a serious gallery requires more than just good taste. It requires capital, connections, experience in handling major acquisitions." And there it was, the opening I'd been waiting for. "Are you suggesting something specific, Victoria?" She smiled, all business now. "A partnership of sorts. Sterling Fine Arts has the resources to handle acquisitions of this caliber. Your academic background could be valuable in our authentication process. And of course, you'd be well compensated." I let the silence stretch, pretending to consider it. "The Vienna collection would be part of this arrangement." "Naturally, along with your other recent acquisitions. Sterling Fine Arts would assume all financial responsibility, of course. Your role would be purely advisory." In other words, she wanted my legitimately sourced collection and my academic credentials to lend credibility to her operation. The pieces clicked into place. She wasn't just running a fraud scheme. She was building a facade of legitimacy to make her forgeries harder to detect. "I'd need time to consider it," I said carefully. "These pieces represent years of work." Of course, she stood, smoothing her silk blazer. But don't take too long. Opportunities like this are rare in our world. The threat was subtle but clear. Join her or become her competition. In the art world, the latter rarely ended well. After she left, I sat in my gallery surrounded by genuine masterpieces, each representing years of careful study and honest dealing. Victoria thought she was springing a trap, but she didn't realize she was walking into one herself. That evening, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to Michael in Amsterdam, confirming that our network of authenticators was ready. The second was to my lawyer, ensuring all documentation of my collection's provenance was ironclad. The next morning, I called Victoria and accepted her offer. What followed was a whirlwind of contracts and negotiations. Victoria's lawyers were thorough, ensuring Sterling Fine Arts would have complete control over my collection and gallery operations. I signed everything without argument, watching as she systematically absorbed my legitimate acquisitions into her operation. Within a week, my carefully curated collection was moved to Sterling Fine Arts. Victoria wasted no time announcing a major exhibition, featuring the Vienna collection as its centerpiece. The art world buzzed with excitement. These were pieces that hadn't been seen publicly in generations. The opening was scheduled for the following month. Victoria spared no expense, inviting collectors, critics, and museum curators from around the world. My role was carefully scripted. I would be presented as Sterling Fine Arts' new academic consultant, lending my credentials to Victoria's already sterling reputation. The trap was set. All that remained was to spring it. The night before the opening, I sat in my empty gallery, looking at the bare walls where genuine masterpieces had hung. My phone buzzed. A message from Michael. Authentication team ready. Documentation complete. I smiled, thinking of Victoria preparing for her triumph, unaware that tomorrow would bring a very different kind of revelation. She'd built her empire on lies. Using my collection as the foundation of legitimacy, she needed to sell her forgeries. But she'd forgotten the first rule of art authentication. The truth always leaves a trace if you know where to look. Tomorrow, the art world would discover exactly who the real professionals were. The morning of the exhibition, I arrived at Sterling Fine Arts 2 hours before the scheduled opening. Victoria's gallery had been transformed into a showcase of opulence, track lighting perfectly positioned, champagne flutes gleaming, and security guards stationed at strategic points. The irony of protecting forged masterpieces with state-of-the-art security wasn't lost on me. Margaret. Victoria's voice carried across the gallery. I need you to review the catalog one last time. We can't have any academic inaccuracies. I accepted the glossy catalog, admiring the professional layout. My legitimate pieces were prominently featured, their impeccable provenances detailed with Victoria's typical thoroughness. But mixed among them were her discoveries, the questionable Vermeer, 3 suspicious Van Goghs, and several other pieces that had raised eyebrows in serious art circles. Everything looks perfect, I said, returning the catalog. The authentication documentation is particularly impressive. Victoria's smile flickered slightly. Was that uncertainty I detected? Yes, well, Marcus has been extremely thorough. Marcus Bennett. The key to Victoria's operation, though she didn't realize I knew exactly how key he was. Over the past month, while helping integrate my collection into Sterling Fine Arts, I'd been quietly building a complete picture of their fraud scheme. It was more sophisticated than I'd initially suspected. Victoria wasn't just dealing in forgeries. She was orchestrating a complex web of fake provenances, manipulated documentation, and carefully crafted stories about each piece's discovery. Marcus provided the technical validation, but the real genius was in how Victoria marketed the forgeries, mixing them with legitimate pieces like mine to create an aura of unquestionable authenticity. What she didn't know was that I'd been documenting everything. 3 weeks earlier, during the collection transfer, I'd accidentally left my laptop open while meeting with Victoria's authentication team. The specially configured device had captured every detail of their internal network, including encrypted communications with their forgers in Eastern Europe. Michael's tech experts had taken care of the rest. The Rembrandt sketch should be the centerpiece, Victoria was saying now, directing her staff to adjust the lighting. The provenance story is perfect, 3 generations in a Viennese private collection, only recently discovered during an estate evaluation. I watched her adjust the frame slightly, remembering how she'd reacted when I first shown her the piece. Her eyes had held that particular gleam I come to recognize. The look of someone seeing not art, but profit. The sketch's discovery story meshes perfectly with the other Dutch masters, she continued. It creates a compelling narrative about lost treasures emerging from old European collections. She was right about the narrative. The art market runs on stories as much as authenticity. Collectors don't just buy art, they buy the romance of discovery, the exclusivity of owning something thought lost to history. Victoria understood this better than anyone. It's what made her forgery scheme so brilliant and so dangerous. But she'd overlooked one crucial detail. The very legitimacy of my collection that made it so valuable to her scheme would also be her undoing. During the past month, I'd watched her operation from the inside, seeing how she and Marcus subtly altered documentation, created false histories, and built seemingly airtight provenances for their forgeries. More importantly, I'd seen how they used my legitimate pieces to lend credibility to their fakes. What they didn't realize was that I brought something else with me besides my collection. A network of the world's top authenticators, all quietly documenting every aspect of sterling fine arts operation. Dr. Elise Dubois from the Louvre had posed as a potential buyer, spending hours examining Victoria's lost Vermeer while secretly documenting the technical inconsistencies in its composition. Professor Heinrich Weber from Berlin's Gemäldegalerie Gallery had reviewed the Van Goghs, his expertise in pigment analysis revealing the careful but detectable use of modern materials. But the real masterstroke had come from an unexpected source. 2 weeks ago, I'd received a call from Thomas Wright, a former student of mine who now worked in digital forensics. He'd found something fascinating in sterling fine arts financial records, a pattern of payments to a small art restoration company in Prague, amounts far too large for legitimate restoration work. The payments correspond exactly with the dates of Victoria's major discoveries. Thomas had explained. And here's the interesting part, the company doesn't actually exist. It's a front for a known forgery operation. I'd added his findings to the growing file of evidence, each piece carefully documented and verified. The authentication reports were damning, but it was the financial trail that would make the case unassailable. Now, watching Victoria direct the final preparations for her grandest exhibition yet, I thought about the other preparations taking place behind the scenes. Michael had arrived from Amsterdam last night, bringing with him a team of experts equipped with the latest authentication technology. They were setting up in a nearby hotel, ready to move the moment the exhibition opened. Margaret? Victoria's voice pulled me from my thoughts. The collectors will be arriving soon. I need you to be prepared to discuss the academic significance of these pieces. Your educational background lends weight to their importance. I smiled, appreciating the irony. Of course, I've prepared detailed notes on each piece's historical context. Excellent. She paused, studying me with those calculating eyes. You know, Margaret, I had my doubts about bringing you in. Academics can be so rigid in their thinking. But you've shown a remarkable ability to adapt to the realities of our business. The realities of our business. Such an elegant euphemism for fraud. I've learned a lot from you, Victoria, I said truthfully. She nodded, satisfied. The art world requires a certain flexibility. Not everything fits into neat academic categories. Sometimes the story of a piece is as important as its provenance. Speaking of stories, I said carefully, I've invited a few colleagues from Europe. Their perspective on the Dutch masters could be valuable. European academics? Victoria's smile tightened slightly. That wasn't necessary. Marcus has already completed all required authentications. Of course, I said smoothly, but their presence adds scholarly credibility to the exhibition. After all, these pieces represent significant art historical discoveries. She couldn't argue without revealing her concern. Instead, she nodded curtly and moved away to supervise the champagne arrangement. I checked my phone. A message from Michael. Team in position. All equipment calibrated. Documentation teams ready. The next few hours passed in a blur of final preparations. I watched Victoria working the room, her confidence growing as everything fell into place. The gallery looked perfect, each piece positioned to tell its carefully crafted story of discovery and exclusivity. At 6:45 p.m., 15 minutes before the opening, Victoria gathered her staff for final instructions. I stood at the back, observing as she detailed how each major piece should be presented to collectors. Remember, she concluded, these works represent some of the most significant discoveries in recent art history. Their provenances are impeccable, their authentications beyond question. Tonight, Sterling Fine Art cements its position as the premier source for important historical works. The staff dispersed to their positions. Victoria turned to me, her expression triumphant. Ready for your academic debut in the real art world? I met her gaze steadily. Absolutely. I think tonight will be quite educational for everyone. She nodded, missing the double meaning in my words. The first guest will be arriving soon. Remember, focus on the historical significance. Leave the provenance discussions to me. As she walked away, I sent a final text to Michael. Opening in 15 minutes. Begin authentication protocols. The trap was set. Victoria had spent a month integrating my legitimate collection into her operation, using my academic credentials to bolster her credibility. Now those same credentials would help expose the truth about her discoveries. I watched the security team do their final sweep, thinking about the other teams preparing to move. In less than an hour, some of the world's top authenticators would begin systematically documenting every flaw, every inconsistency, every piece of evidence that would bring down Sterling Fine Arts. Victoria had built her empire on beautiful lies, using my legitimate pieces as cover for her forgeries. But she'd forgotten something crucial about art. The truth isn't just in the documentation or the provenance. It's in the brushstrokes, the pigments, the thousand tiny details that no forger, no matter how skilled, can perfectly replicate. Through the gallery's windows, I could see cars beginning to arrive. Collectors, critics, museum curators, all eager to see Victoria's latest discoveries. They would see something remarkable tonight, but not quite what they expected. I straightened my jacket and checked my phone one last time. Everything was in place. In a few hours, the art world would learn the truth about Sterling Fine Art's magnificent collection. Victoria appeared beside me, practically glowing with anticipated triumph. Shall we? She gestured toward the door. I smiled, thinking of the authentication teams waiting nearby. Yes, I said. Let's show everyone exactly what we discovered. The exhibition opening unfolded like a perfectly choreographed performance. Victoria moved through the crowd with practiced grace, champagne in hand, weaving stories about each masterpiece that had collectors practically reaching for their checkbooks on the spot. The brush technique is unmistakably Vermeer, she was telling a group of wide-eyed collectors. The way he captured the light through the window, it's his signature style from the middle period. I checked my watch, 7:45 p.m. Michael's team would be starting their work now. The gallery hummed with excitement as San Francisco's elite art patrons mingled, sipping champagne and discussing the millions they were prepared to spend. I recognized several museum directors, including James Harrison from the De Young Museum, who was studying the questionable Vermeer with intense interest. Victoria's triumph seemed complete. She positioned my legitimate pieces strategically throughout the gallery, using their undeniable authenticity to lend credibility to her forgeries. The Rembrandt sketch, genuine and perfectly documented, drew visitors naturally toward the suspicious Dutch masters hanging nearby. At 8:15, right on schedule, Michael entered the gallery. He wasn't alone. Dr. Dubois from the Louvre and Professor Weber from Berlin flanked him, their expressions professionally neutral as they surveyed the room. Victoria's smile flickered slightly when she saw them. "Margaret," she hissed, appearing at my elbow, "who are these people?" "Distinguished colleagues," I said calmly. "They were very interested in your Dutch master's collection." Before she could respond, Michael approached, extending his hand. "Ms. Sterling, Michael van der Meer, Dutch National Art Archives. Your collection is fascinating." Victoria recovered quickly, but I caught the flash of panic in her eyes. "How wonderful to have European expertise here tonight, though I assure you, all pieces have been thoroughly authenticated." "Yes." Dr. Dubois joined in, her French accent precise. "By Marcus Bennett, I believe. A rather interesting choice for Dutch masters." The trap was closing. Victoria maintained her composure, but I could see her mind racing, calculating risks and possibilities. "Perhaps," Michael suggested, "we could discuss the technical details of the authentication process, particularly for the Vermeer." The provenance documentation mentioned the Backer collection. Victoria's face paled slightly. She knew as well as I did that Michael had personally catalogued that collection. I'm afraid the detailed documentation is at our secure facility, she said smoothly, but I'd be happy to arrange a private viewing. No need, Dr. Dubois interrupted, removing a tablet from her bag. We've already completed our preliminary analysis. The next hour was a masterpiece of professional demolition. As collectors watched in growing shock, the team of experts systematically exposed the truth about Victoria's prized discoveries. Dr. Dubois projected microscopic images of the Vermeer's paint layers, revealing pigments that didn't exist in the 17th century. Professor Weber demonstrated how the cracklier pattern had been artificially induced. Michael presented documentation proving the impossibility of the provenance stories Victoria had crafted. This isn't just a single forgery, Michael explained to the stunned audience. It's a systematic fraud operation using legitimate pieces to mask an extensive forgery network. Victoria stood frozen, her perfect composure cracking as her empire crumbled around her. When Thomas Wright arrived with the financial documentation linking Sterling Fine Arts to the Prague forgery operation, she finally broke. You, she turned to me, rage replacing her usual polish. You planned this? All of it? No, Victoria, I said quietly. You planned this the moment you decided to steal my collection and use it to legitimize your forgeries. The gallery erupted in chaos. Collectors who had spent millions on Victoria's discoveries demanded explanations. Museum directors who had authenticated pieces for their institutions pulled out phones, making urgent calls. Security guards looked uncertainly between Victoria and the exit. The legitimate pieces, James Harrison from the De Young asked, "How can we distinguish?" "Every piece from my collection," I said clearly, "has complete, verifiable documentation. I've prepared a detailed catalog." Victoria laughed suddenly, a harsh sound that cut through the commotion. "You self-righteous academic. You think exposing this changes anything? Art is about stories, about making people believe. I sold them what they wanted to believe." "No," I corrected her. "You sold them lies. Art is about truth, in every brush stroke, every pigment, every detail that true masters left behind. That's what you never understood." The police arrived at 9:30. Victoria maintained her dignity as they led her away. But Marcus Bennett broke immediately, confirming every detail of the operation. The Prague connection, the forged documentation, the elaborate scheme to mix forgeries with legitimate pieces, it was all exposed. In the aftermath, my phone didn't stop ringing. Museums worldwide wanted my authentication services. Collectors begged for help evaluating their purchases. The art world was in upheaval, and somehow I'd become its voice of integrity. 1 week after the exhibition, I sat in my restored gallery space in Oakland, surrounded by my legitimate collection, returned by court order from Sterling Fine Arts. Michael had flown back to Amsterdam, but not before helping me establish new authentication protocols that would become the industry standard. "You've changed things," he told me before leaving. The art world needed this wake-up call. Looking at my collection now, I thought about Victoria's words about stories and belief. She wasn't entirely wrong. Art does tell stories. But the true masterpieces, the ones that survive centuries, tell stories of authenticity, of human genius and creativity. The media called it the Sterling Scandal, but its impact went far beyond one fraudulent gallery. The incident sparked a revolution in art authentication, leading to stricter protocols and more transparent documentation requirements. My authentication consultancy became the gold standard, trusted by museums and collectors worldwide. Victoria faced multiple federal charges for fraud and money laundering. The trial made headlines, exposing the dark underbelly of the art world. Marcus Bennett turned state's evidence, revealing a network of forgery operations that reached across Europe. But the real victory wasn't about punishment or revenge. It was about protecting the integrity of art itself, the genuine masterpieces that human creativity has produced across centuries. 6 months later, I received an unexpected letter. It was from Victoria, writing from federal prison. "You were right," she wrote, "about all of it. I forgot that real art carries truth in every stroke. Perhaps that's why your collection always outshone my forgeries. Authenticity has a quality that can't be faked." I folded the letter and looked at the Rembrandt sketch hanging on my wall, the genuine one that had helped expose the fraud. In the master's confident lines, I could see the truth that Victoria had never understood. Real art doesn't need elaborate stories or false provenances. Its authenticity speaks through centuries, carrying the unmistakable mark of genuine human creativity. My gallery flourished, but not in the way Victoria's had. Instead of chasing profits through deception, I built a reputation for absolute integrity. Young artists and collectors sought my guidance, learning to recognize the difference between true masterpieces and beautiful lies. The art world changed too. The Sterling scandal led to the creation of an international authentication database, making it harder for forgers to operate. Museums implemented stricter verification protocols, and collectors learned to value provenance over sensational discovery stories. Sometimes, late at night in my gallery, I think about Victoria and the choice she made to value profit over authenticity. In the end, her greatest forgery wasn't the fake Vermeer or the suspicious Van Goghs, it was the lie she told herself about what art really means. As for me, I returned to teaching at Berkeley, but with a new course added to my schedule: Authentication and Integrity in the Art World. My students learn not just about brushstrokes and pigments, but about the fundamental truth that Victoria never grasped. In art, as in life, authenticity is the only masterpiece that truly matters. The Rembrandt sketch still hangs in my gallery, a reminder of how truth prevails in its own quiet way. Its genuine brushstrokes tell a story no forger could ever replicate, a story of real creativity, true mastery, and the enduring power of artistic integrity. And that's a story worth more than all the forged masterpieces in the world.
My name is Sarah Winter, and I learned early in life that some families measure love in dollar signs. Growing up in the prestigious Winter family meant living under the constant pressure of expectations, not just about who you were, but more importantly, how much you were worth. I was always different from my cousins. While they chased corporate dreams and fought for positions in the family's investment firm, I saw a different path. Energy infrastructure fascinated me, the intricate systems that powered cities, the potential for sustainable solutions, the way everything connected. But in the Winter family, if you weren't in finance or real estate, you might as well not exist. Another crazy idea, Sarah, my cousin Marcus would say, his voice dripping with condescension whenever I tried to explain my passion for renewable energy. I suppose someone has to read electric meters for a living. The annual Winter family Christmas gathering was always a parade of wealth and achievements. This year was no different as we gathered at Uncle Philip's mansion, a sprawling estate that screamed old money and privilege. The 20-foot Christmas tree in the foyer dripped with ornaments worth more than most people's cars. Aunt Victoria stood by the fireplace, diamond tennis bracelet catching the light as she gestured with her wine glass. Did you hear about Marcus? Just closed a $50 million real estate deal. Following right in his father's footsteps, her eyes slid to me, sharp with disapproval. And Sarah, are you still doing that? What was it again? Something with power plants. I took a slow sip of wine, remembering the contracts sitting on my desk at home. Contracts they knew nothing about. Yes, Aunt Victoria, still working in energy. My cousin Olivia, fresh from her promotion to VP at Winter Investment Group, snickered. God, Sarah, don't you get tired of being the family charity case? Even the cleaning lady drives a better car than you. I glanced out the window at my modest Honda Civic parked among the Mercedes and BMWs. They had no idea that I chose to keep driving it even after Winter Peak Holdings, my company, had acquired its fourth power utility. Speaking of charity, Uncle Philip's voice boomed across the room as he joined our little circle. It's time for the gift exchange. Though Sarah, dear, if you couldn't afford to participate this year, we understand. The room fell quiet as everyone turned to look at me. This was their favorite part, the annual ritual of expensive gifts that served as a measuring stick of success. I watched as Olivia unwrapped a Cartier watch from Marcus, as Aunt Victoria exclaimed over a first-class vacation package from her husband. When it was my turn, I handed out simple cards to each family member. It's not much, I said softly, playing my role, just something small to show I care. Marcus barely glanced at his card before tossing it aside. How thoughtful. A card. Maybe next year you can afford actual presents. I saw my card flutter into the wastepaper basket, and something inside me hardened. They had no idea that those cards contained information that would become very relevant very soon. You see, while they were busy mocking my career choices, I had been quietly building an empire. Winter Peak Holdings now controlled power utilities across 3 states. Tomorrow, the announcement would go public. We had just acquired Evergreen Energy, the company that supplied power to this very mansion. And with that acquisition came something interesting. The discovery that the Winter family's various properties had been grossly underpaying for electricity through a fraudulent billing scheme orchestrated by Uncle Philip himself. I excused myself early from the gathering, citing work obligations. Of course you have to leave. Olivia called after me. Those electric meters won't read themselves. As I drove home in my trusty Honda, I smiled, thinking about the letters that would arrive with their January bills. Detailed audits of years of fraudulent billing, demands for back payment with interest, and notification of new ownership. Soon they would learn that the family's charity case now held the switch to their lights. But that was tomorrow's drama. Tonight, I had contracts to sign and an empire to run. The power company acquisition was just the beginning. I had spent years building Winter Peak Holdings from the ground up, careful to keep my name hidden behind layers of corporate structure. Not out of shame, but because I knew this day would come. The day when my family's mockery would finally meet reality. Let them laugh at my Honda. Let them sneer at my simple gifts. In less than 24 hours, they would learn what real power looked like. And it had nothing to do with the size of your Christmas tree. The morning after Christmas dawned cold and bright. I sat in my home office, a converted industrial loft that would have shocked my family with its understated elegance. Watching the financial news channels, any minute now, the announcement would break. Right on schedule, the ticker tape began scrolling. BUREAKI. Winter Peak Holdings acquires Evergreen Energy in $2.8 billion deal. Largest utility merger of the year. My phone buzzed. It was James, my CFO. It's done, Sarah. The audit notices are being sent out right now. Every Winter family property will receive their updated bills by noon. I glanced at my watch. 10:30 a.m. Uncle Philip would be at his usual late breakfast. Aunt Victoria would be at her yoga class. And Marcus would be bragging about his latest deal to anyone who would listen. Their peaceful morning was about to shatter. The first call came at 11:45 a.m. Uncle Philip's name flashed on my screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then, Aunt Victoria. Then Marcus. By noon, I had 17 missed calls from family members. The emails started flooding in too. URGENT. Regarding Evergreen Energy bill. Need to discuss power company situation immediately. What is the meaning of this outrageous bill? I opened Uncle Philip's email first. His usual pompous tone had given way to barely contained panic. Sarah, there must be some mistake. We just received a bill from Evergreen Energy, now apparently Winter Peak Holdings, claiming we owe $847,000 in unpaid utilities and penalties. This is obviously an error. Call me immediately. Attached was the audit notice I had personally approved. It detailed 5 years of fraudulent billing schemes, manipulated meter readings, and falsified usage reports. Everything was meticulously documented, every number triple-checked. At 1 p.m., my office phone rang. The receptionist's voice was amused. "Ms. Winter, your cousin Marcus is in the lobby. He's quite insistent about seeing you." I straightened my blazer and smiled. "Send him up." Marcus burst through my office door, his designer suit wrinkled, his face red with fury. He stopped short when he saw me sitting behind the massive desk. The city skyline spread out behind me through floor-to-ceiling windows. "What the hell is this?" He waved a stack of papers. "Some kind of joke." I leaned back in my chair. "The audit papers seem quite clear, Marcus. Winter Family Properties have been underpaying for utilities for years through various fraudulent schemes. Winter Peak Holdings is simply correcting this oversight." Winter Peak. His face went from red to white. You own Winter Peak Holdings?" "Founded it 6 years ago," I said calmly. "Built it from the ground up, while you were all laughing at my career choices." He sank into one of the visitor chairs, papers slipping from his fingers. "The card? At Christmas. It was a notice, wasn't it? A courtesy heads up. I did try to warn you all, in my own way." Marcus ran a shaking hand through his hair. $800,000. Uncle Philip will have a heart attack. Actually, I pressed a button on my desk, and my assistant brought in another stack of documents. That's just for the main house. We're still processing the audits for the vacation properties, the company buildings, and all those luxury apartments the family owns. The color drained completely from Marcus's face. "You can't do this. We're family." I stood up slowly, placing both hands on my desk. "Family. Yesterday, I was the charity case who couldn't afford Christmas presents. The day before that, I was the embarrassment who chose energy over real estate. For years, I was the punchline to every family joke." I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Funny how family only matters when you need something. "What do you want?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Want? I don't want anything, Marcus. I'm simply running my company, enforcing contracts, collecting debts. You know, all those business principles Uncle Philip taught us." A commotion outside my office drew our attention. Through the glass walls, I could see Uncle Philip himself storming down the hallway, followed by a flustered security guard. "I told you this would get interesting," I said to Marcus, just as my office door flew open. Uncle Philip looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. His usual perfectly groomed appearance was disheveled, his face mottled with rage. "What is the meaning of this?" he roared, waving his own stack of audit papers. I met his gaze steadily. "Hello, Uncle Philip. I believe those papers explain everything quite clearly. Would you like me to go through them line by line?" He slammed the papers down on my desk. "You think you can extort your own family? After everything we've done for you?" I couldn't help but laugh. "Done for me? What exactly have you done for me, Uncle Philip? Mocked my career choices, excluded me from family opportunities, treated me like a failure because I didn't fit your narrow definition of success." "I'll fight this," he sputtered. "I'll take you to court." I pressed another button on my desk, and the large screen on the wall came to life, displaying years of documented fraud. "By all means, let's go to court. I'm sure the press would love to hear how the prestigious Winter family has been cheating the utility system for years. Shall I call them now?" The fight seemed to drain out of him all at once. He collapsed into a chair next to Marcus, looking suddenly old and defeated. The total amount due, including penalties and interest, comes to just over $4.2 million for all Winter family properties. I said, my voice professionally pleasant. "You have 30 days to pay in full, or will be forced to discontinue service. And before you think of switching providers, Winter Peak Holdings now controls all power utilities in the tri-state area. You've been planning this for years, Marcus said quietly. I thought about all the Christmas dinners, all the snide remarks, all the times they had made me feel small. Let's just say I learned from the best. The Winter family taught me everything I know about business, especially the part about never mixing family with finances. As they sat there, broken and humiliated, I remembered something else. Reaching into my desk drawer, I pulled out 2 envelopes. Your Christmas cards, I said, sliding them across the desk. The ones you threw away without reading. They contained advance notice of the acquisition and an offer for a payment plan at a reduced rate. But since you didn't bother to read them, I shrugged. The full amount is now due. Uncle Philip and Marcus stared at the envelopes, the final twist of the knife in their wounded pride. Now, I said, standing up, I have a board meeting to attend. My assistant will show you out. Happy holidays. As they shuffled out of my office, I heard Marcus mutter, She played us. All these years she played us. I smiled, turning to look out at my city. No, Marcus, I didn't play you. I just learned to play the game better than you ever did. But this was just the beginning. The real storm was yet to come, and I had a feeling the Winter family's new year was going to be very interesting indeed. The next few weeks were a symphony of chaos. The Winter family, once so proud and untouchable, was unraveling thread by thread. My assistant forwarded me an email chain she'd accidentally been copied on. The family was desperately trying to gather the money for the utility bills. Uncle Philip had already maxed out his credit lines. Marcus's real estate deals were largely leveraged paper wealth. Aunt Victoria's jewelry was being quietly appraised for sale. But the best part? They still hadn't realized the full scope of what was coming. I sat in my office, reviewing the latest reports when my phone buzzed. It was Olivia. We need to talk, she said, her usual smugness replaced by barely controlled panic. The Winter Investment Group's accounts. They're frozen. I smiled, spinning slowly in my chair to face the city skyline. Oh, that's concerning. Don't play dumb, Sarah. This has you written all over it. She was right, of course. The utility audit had been just the opening move. While investigating the fraudulent billing, my team had uncovered something much bigger. Years of financial mismanagement and questionable transactions at the Winter Investment Group. As a major utilities provider, I said calmly, Winter Peak Holdings has a legal obligation to report any suspected financial irregularities we discover during our audits. The SEC is very particular about these things. The silence on the other end was deafening. You, Olivia's voice cracked. You reported us to the SEC. Not just the SEC. The audit findings have been shared with all relevant regulatory bodies. I believe the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit is particularly interested in some of Uncle Philip's creative accounting. Another call beeped through. Aunt Victoria. I put her on conference. Sarah, darling. Her voice dripped with desperate sweetness. We need to discuss this like family. Surely we can come to some arrangement. Family. I repeated the word thoughtfully. Funny how that word only matters when you need something. Last Christmas, I was the embarrassment, the charity case. Remember? We were just teasing. Aunt Victoria protested. You can't destroy the family over some hurt feelings. I'm not destroying anything, I replied coolly. I'm simply running my business and following the law. Isn't that what you all taught me? Business is business? The next day, headlines exploded across financial news. Winter Investment Group under federal investigation. Winter family empire faces multiple fraud allegations. Winter Peak Holdings CEO uncovers multi-million-dollar utility fraud. By evening, my office lobby was filled with reporters. Everyone wanted to know how the quiet Winter cousin had built a power company empire right under her family's noses. How the supposed failure had become the one holding all the cards. I scheduled a press conference for the following morning. It was time to step fully into the light. The conference room was packed. Cameras flashed as I took the podium, dressed in a power suit that cost more than all the Christmas gifts my family had ever given me combined. "Good morning," I began, my voice clear and strong. "I'm Sarah Winter, CEO of Winter Peak Holdings. Today, I want to discuss our recent acquisition of Evergreen Energy and our commitment to corporate transparency and accountability." In the middle of my speech, I saw them slip into the back of the room: Uncle Philip, Aunt Victoria, Marcus, Olivia. Their faces were ashen as I detailed the fraud investigation, the SEC involvement, the complete restructuring of all Winter family business interests. After the conference, they cornered me in my office. "You've destroyed us," Uncle Philip said hoarsely. "The family name." "The family name?" I cut him off. "The same name you said I was disgracing by working in energy? That name." "What do you want?" Marcus demanded. "Name your price." I walked to my window, looking out at the city I now partially powered. "I want you to understand something. Success isn't measured by how many people you can step on. Power isn't about who has the biggest house or the most expensive car." I turned back to face them. Real power is about building something meaningful, something that lasts. While you were all playing rich family politics, I was creating an empire that actually matters. "So this is your revenge?" Olivia whispered. "No," I shook my head. "This is justice. Every fraudulent dollar will be repaid. Every illegal scheme will be exposed. And the Winter family will learn that actions have consequences." I pressed a button on my desk, and security appeared at my door. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a company to run. Oh, and don't forget, your utility bills are due next week." As they were escorted out, I saw something I'd never seen before in their eyes. Respect. Not the kind that comes from fear or money, but the kind that comes from being completely and utterly outplayed. The Winter family's power had always been built on appearances, on old money and older secrets. But real power? That comes from being underestimated, from being patient, from building something true while others laugh at your dreams. 1 year later, I hosted the family Christmas dinner in my penthouse apartment. The same relatives who once mocked my Honda now arrived in modest cars, their designer clothes replaced by department store brands. The Winter Investment Group had been dissolved. Uncle Philip was facing criminal charges, and the family fortune had been largely wiped out by fines and restitution payments. But something else had changed too. The smears were gone, replaced by genuine conversations. The boasting had given way to honest discussions about rebuilding, about learning from mistakes. As I stood at my window, watching the city lights twinkle, lights powered by my company, Olivia approached me. "I never apologized," she said quietly, "for all those years of everything." I smiled, thinking of that last Christmas when they'd called me poor. You know what the funny thing is? I never wanted their money or their approval. I just wanted them to see me, really see me. "We see you now," she said softly. "Yes," I agreed, watching my family gather around my Christmas tree, humbled but perhaps finally real. Yes, you do. I raised my glass, thinking about power, not the kind that flows through electrical lines, but the kind that flows through truth, through justice, through standing up for yourself, even when no one believes in you. Merry Christmas, I said to my chastened family. May your holidays be bright. After all, I smiled, remembering all those years of mockery. I'm the one keeping the lights on. My name is Sarah Winter, and I learned early in life that some families measure love in dollar signs. Growing up in the prestigious Winter family meant living under the constant pressure of expectations, not just about who you were, but more importantly, how much you were worth. I was always different from my cousins. While they chased corporate dreams and fought for positions in the family's investment firm, I saw a different path. Energy infrastructure fascinated me, the intricate systems that powered cities, the potential for sustainable solutions, the way everything connected. But in the Winter family, if you weren't in finance or real estate, you might as well not exist. Another crazy idea, Sarah, my cousin Marcus would say, his voice dripping with condescension whenever I tried to explain my passion for renewable energy. I suppose someone has to read electric meters for a living. The annual Winter family Christmas gathering was always a parade of wealth and achievements. This year was no different as we gathered at Uncle Philip's mansion, a sprawling estate that screamed old money and privilege. The sound of dishes crashing to the floor was my first memory of La Maison. I was 5 years old, watching in horror as my father's career as a restaurateur came crashing down, literally and figuratively. That night, as he swept up broken plates and dreams, he told me something I'd never forget. Sophia, in this business, you either own the restaurant or the restaurant owns you. 25 years later, those words still echo in my mind as I stand in the kitchen of taste, watching my staff prepare for another busy night. They don't know I own this place. None of them do, except for my lawyer and accountant. To everyone else, I'm just Sophie Martinez, the quiet consultant who occasionally drops by to observe operations. My family? They think I'm a failed chef who couldn't hack it in culinary school. They're not entirely wrong about the culinary school part. I dropped out after 2 semesters. What they don't know is that I left because I was too busy buying my first failing restaurant and turning it around for a profit. You're throwing your life away, Mom had said when I quit school. Look at your sister Olivia, graduating medical school with honors, making something of herself. Ah, Olivia, the golden child, the successful surgeon who could do no wrong. Every family dinner became a celebration of her latest achievement, while my presence was tolerated with thinly veiled disappointment. But I had a plan. While they thought I was floundering, I was building an empire. One restaurant at a time, I acquired failing establishments, revitalized them, and either sold them for profit or kept them in my growing portfolio. I operated through a maze of holding companies and LLCs, keeping my name off any public documents. In the restaurant industry, anonymity was power. Taste was my crown jewel. When it came on the market 3 years ago, my family was devastated. It had been their favorite restaurant for special occasions, birthdays, anniversaries, celebrations of Olivia's endless achievements. The previous owner, an old-school French chef, had run it into the ground with mismanagement and an outdated menu. I bought it through one of my companies, poured millions into renovations, and transformed it into the hottest reservation in the city. The irony of my family still dining here, never knowing it was mine, gave me a quiet satisfaction. Ms. Martinez. Miguel, my general manager, approached with a tablet in hand. The private party for tonight. The Martinez Group, they've requested some special arrangements. My stomach tightened. Tonight was Mom's 60th birthday celebration, organized by Olivia, of course. I'd received the invitation 2 weeks ago, a reluctant inclusion that made it clear my presence was more obligation than desire. What kind of arrangements? I asked, though I already had a feeling I knew. They've requested 20 seats at the main table, but Miguel looked uncomfortable. They've asked for an additional small table near the kitchen for one guest. They said it's for family who's, more comfortable with the staff. The knife twisted deeper. Same old Olivia, finding ways to put me in my place. She probably told the restaurant it was for a socially awkward cousin or something equally dismissive. I see. I kept my voice neutral. And the main table arrangements? Miguel scrolled through his tablet. Dr. Olivia Martinez specified the seating. She's placed herself next to her husband Daniel at the head of the table, with their parents next to them. Then various aunts, uncles, cousins. He paused. She was very particular about the champagne service, only for the main table. Of course she was. Heaven forbid the family disappointment get a glass of champagne. I spent the rest of the afternoon in my hidden office above the kitchen, watching the security feeds as my family arrived. Mom and Dad first, Mom resplendent in a new designer dress. Then Olivia and Daniel, her surgeon husband, looking like they'd stepped out of a magazine. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all dressed to impress. I arrived last, wearing a simple black dress that probably cost less than Olivia's shoes. The hostess, following instructions she didn't know came from my sister, led me to the small table near the kitchen doors. "You can sit here," Olivia said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "Where you belong." She smirked, adjusting her diamond necklace. "After all, you always said you wanted to work in restaurants." The rest of the family tittered politely at her joke. Mom looked embarrassed, but said nothing. Dad suddenly became very interested in his menu. I sat down at my lonely table, watching the champagne being poured at the main table, listening to the toasts and laughter. Each time the kitchen door swung open, I caught glimpses of my staff, working with the precision and excellence I demanded when I rebuilt this place. Miguel approached my table looking nervous. He knew me as the consultant who signed his paychecks, but he'd been instructed by Olivia to treat me like an unwanted guest. "Can I get you some water?" he asked quietly. I looked up at him, then at my family celebrating without me, then back at the manager who had no idea he was speaking to the owner of not just this restaurant, but 5 others across the city. "Actually," I said, reaching for my phone, "I think it's time for some changes to tonight's service." The next few hours would teach my family a lesson about judging books by their covers. And maybe, just maybe, they'd finally understand that success doesn't always wear a designer label or come with a medical degree. Little did they know, they were celebrating in my house. And in my house, everyone eventually learns their place at the table. I've learned something important in my years of running restaurants. Timing is everything. Whether you're plating a perfect souffle or destroying someone's illusions of superiority, it all comes down to the exact right moment. Sitting at my isolated table, I watched my family through new eyes. The way Olivia held court at the head of the table, regaling everyone with stories of her latest surgical triumph. How Mom beamed with pride while Dad nodded along, occasionally glancing at his phone to check stock prices. The cousins, aunts, and uncles all orbiting around them like satellites around a sun. 20 years of dismissal and condescension had led to this moment. But before I could make my move, Olivia decided to twist the knife one more time. "Oh, Miguel," she called out to my manager, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Could you please make sure my sister gets the special menu? She threw me a smirk. The one with prices removed. We wouldn't want her to worry about the cost. Miguel looked uncomfortable, knowing full well I signed his paychecks as the consultant. But he had his instructions from the party organizer. He brought me a menu, apologetic eyes meeting mine. The special menu, as requested, he murmured. I opened it, noticing how Olivia watched expectantly, waiting for my humiliation. Instead, I smiled. Miguel, I said clearly, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Please bring me your wine list, the complete one, including the reserve cellar. Olivia's eyebrows shot up. The reserve cellar at Taste was legendary. Bottles ranging from $500 to $50,000, carefully curated over years. Access was by invitation only, something she tried and failed to obtain despite her status as a regular customer. Sofia, Mom called from the main table, her voice tight with embarrassment. Don't be difficult. You know you can't afford. Actually, I cut in. I think I'll have the 1982 Chateau Lafite Rothschild. I turned to Miguel. From the private collection in Cellar 3. The room went quiet. Even the regular diners knew about that bottle. $15,000 of liquid history, part of a collection that the mysterious owner of Taste had reportedly acquired at auction. Miguel's eyes widened slightly. He knew that only one person could authorize that bottle. Right away, Ms. Martinez, he said, a new note of respect in his voice. Sofia, stop this immediately, Dad snapped, his face reddening. You can't just order. I can, I said calmly, and I will. In fact, I stood up, straightening my simple black dress. Miguel, please open the reserve cellar. I think it's time we shared some of our best bottles with the entire party. Olivia shot up from her seat. You can't do that. Do you have any idea how much those bottles cost? They'll add it to Mom's bill. And... No, I said softly. They won't. I walked to the center of the room, where all eyes were now on me. 20 years of being the family disappointment, the failed chef, the cautionary tale. It all ended tonight. You see, Olivia, there won't be any bill tonight. Not for the wine, not for the food, not for anything. I paused, letting the tension build. Because you can't charge the owner for dining in their own restaurant. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see the wheels turning in Olivia's head, trying to process what I'd just said. Mom's hand flew to her throat, clutching her pearls. Dad's phone slipped from his fingers, clattering onto his plate. What? What are you talking about? Olivia managed finally. I smiled, the same smile I'd practiced in boardrooms and business negotiations. Let me make this very clear. I own Taste. Not just Taste, actually. I own Le Petit Jardin downtown, Marina Bay on the waterfront, Rustico in the financial district, Cloud 9 at the top of the Anderson building, and Bistro 55 in the theater district. Each name landed like a blow. They knew these restaurants, the most exclusive, most successful establishments in the city. Places where they'd celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, Olivia's promotions. Places they'd bragged about getting reservations to, never knowing their failed chef of a relative signed the checks. That's impossible, Mom whispered. Those restaurants are owned by the Martinez Restaurant Group. Yes, I agreed. They are. Martinez Restaurant Group, founded by Sofia Martinez, incorporated 7 years ago. I turned to Miguel. Could you please bring my laptop from my office? the one above the kitchen. As Miguel hurried off, I could see the reality starting to sink in for my family. Every dismissive comment, every condescending remark, every time they'd look down on my failure, it was all coming back to haunt them. But you dropped out of culinary school, Olivia sputtered. You couldn't even finish your training. I dropped out because I was too busy buying my first restaurant, I corrected her. A failing Italian place in the business district. Bought it for pennies on the dollar, turned it around in 6 months, sold it for triple the investment. Used that money to buy 2 more failing restaurants. Rinse and repeat. Miguel returned with my laptop. I opened it, logging into the restaurant's systems. With a few keystrokes, every screen in the restaurant, the ones usually showing wine selections and daily specials, switched to display the Martinez Restaurant Group's holdings and financial statements. Current annual revenue across all properties, $35 million, I announced. Net profit last year, $12 million. Market value of the restaurant group, approximately $150 million. The numbers hit them like physical blows. I could see Dad, the former accountant, mouthing the figures in shock. Olivia had gone pale, her perfectly manicured hands gripping the edge of the table. All those times you seated me by the kitchen, I continued, my voice carrying in the hushed room. All those times you made jokes about my restaurant career. I was signing your checks. Every bottle of wine you ordered to impress your friends, every special table you requested, every time you dropped my name to get a reservation. You were trading on my reputation without even knowing it. The look on their faces was almost worth 20 years of condescension. Almost. But I wasn't done yet, because timing, as I said, is everything, and I had saved my best course for last. The thing about revenge, like fine wine, is that it's best served at precisely the right temperature. Too cold, and you lose the subtle notes. Too warm, and it overwhelms the palate. As I stood in my restaurant, watching my family process the revelation of my success, I felt a strange sense of calm. The expensive bottle of wine arrived, and I gestured for Miguel to pour glasses for everyone, even at my former lonely table by the kitchen. A toast, I said, lifting my glass, to assumptions and to their consequences. Olivia remained frozen. Her perfect makeup couldn't hide the shock on her face. Mom kept opening and closing her mouth, like a fish out of water. Dad, ever the accountant, had pulled out his phone and was frantically Googling the Martinez Restaurant Group. But why? Mom finally managed. Why didn't you tell us? Tell you? I laughed softly. When would that have been appropriate? During the family dinners where you only talked about Olivia's accomplishments. Or maybe during those lovely holiday gatherings where you introduced me as your daughter who works in restaurants, like it was some kind of terminal illness. We were worried about you, Dad protested weakly, still staring at his phone. We thought you were struggling. No, I corrected him. You wanted me to struggle. You needed me to struggle, because my failure made Olivia's success shine brighter. Olivia finally found her voice. That's not fair. Not fair? I cut her off. Let's talk about fair, dear sister. I pulled out my tablet and pulled up some records. Let's discuss the 12 times you called my office, not knowing it was mine, demanding special treatment at my restaurants, or the time you tried to get my manager fired at Le Petit Jardin because he wouldn't give you a table without a reservation. The color drained from her face. That was, I didn't. Or perhaps, I continued, my voice steel wrapped in silk. We should discuss the review you posted online about Marina Bay last month. The one where you claimed to know the owner personally and threatened to have the chef fired. A gasp went around the table. Olivia had bragged about that review, about how she'd shown that uppity restaurant its place. I didn't know it was yours, she whispered. That's exactly the point. You didn't know, but you acted that way anyway. All of you did. I looked around the table at my assembled family. You treated service workers, restaurant staff, and anyone you thought was beneath you with contempt. And all the while, you were dining in my establishments, enjoying my success, and benefiting from my hard work. I nodded to Miguel, who disappeared into the kitchen. A moment later, he returned with a team of servers, each carrying folders. Inside these folders, I announced, you'll find some interesting documents. Financial records of every meal you've enjoyed in my restaurants, every special favor you've requested, every time you've dropped my name or claimed connections to get what you wanted. The servers distributed the folders. Hands shaking, my relatives opened them. You'll also find, I continued, receipts for every Christmas bonus I've anonymously given to the staff you've berated. Every tip I've added to make up for the ones you've skipped. Every repair bill for the things you've broken during your entitled tantrums. Mom was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. But I wasn't finished. And finally, I said, my voice carrying in the silent restaurant, you'll find lifetime bans from all Martinez Restaurant Group properties. Effective immediately. The explosion was immediate. You can't do this, Olivia shrieked, standing up so fast her chair toppled backward. We're family. Family? I raised an eyebrow. Was it family when you seated me by the kitchen tonight? Was it family when you mocked my career choice for 20 years? Was it family when you treated my staff, people who depend on me for their livelihoods, like they were beneath you? Safia, please. Mom pleaded. We can fix this. We didn't know. That's right, Mom. You didn't know. You never bothered to find out. You were too busy planning parties to celebrate Olivia's every minor achievement to notice that your other daughter was building an empire. I turned to Miguel. Please escort them out, all of them, and make sure their bans are implemented across all properties immediately. As security began to move forward, Dad stood up. Wait, the bill, for tonight. Consider it my last gift, I said coldly. A final meal in one of my restaurants. Though I doubt you'll enjoy the taste of humble pie. I watched as they were escorted out, my proud family reduced to shocked whispers and backward glances. Olivia tried to protest one last time at the door, but the sight of additional security guards convinced her to leave quietly. Once they were gone, I addressed the other diners, who had watched the scene unfold with rapt attention. I apologize for the disruption, I said. Your meals tonight are on the house. Please, enjoy the rest of your evening. The applause that followed was unexpected but warming. I nodded to Miguel to bring me the expensive bottle of wine at my small table by the kitchen. My favorite spot, as it turned out. The place where I could hear the rhythm of my restaurant, feel its heartbeat. Over the next few weeks, the calls and messages poured in. Apologies, explanations, justifications. Mom left tearful voicemails about how proud she was, how she'd always believed in me. She hadn't. Olivia's messages swung between anger and attempted reconciliation. Dad sent lengthy emails analyzing my business success, offering unsolicited advice about tax strategies. I ignored them all. 6 months later, I opened my newest restaurant, a small, intimate place called Second Chances. The concept was simple. We hired people who needed a fresh start, trained them in the culinary arts, and gave them the opportunity I'd made for myself. On opening night, as I stood in the kitchen watching my new staff prepare for service, Miguel appeared at my side. "Your family is outside," he said quietly. "Your sister made a reservation under a different name. They're asking to speak with you." I thought about it for a moment, remembered the lonely girl at the table by the kitchen, remembered the years of dismissal and doubt. Then I thought about the empire I'd built, the success I'd achieved, the lives I was changing. "Tell them," I said, tying on my apron and picking up a knife, "that the owner is busy cooking, and remind them about their lifetime ban." Miguel smiled and headed out. I turned to my new staff, former addicts, ex-cons, abuse survivors, all getting their second chance. "All right, everyone," I called out. "Time to show the world what you can do. Remember what I always say?" They joined in, voices strong and proud. "In this business, you either own the restaurant or the restaurant owns you." I smiled, feeling the familiar heat of the kitchen, the energy of circus about to begin. This was my empire, built on hard work, skill, and the determination to prove everyone wrong. And the best revenge wasn't serving it cold. It was serving it perfectly prepared, beautifully plated, and completely out of reach. The kitchen doors swung open and another night of service began. In my restaurants, everyone eventually learns their place. Some just learn it the hard way. As for my family, they still try to get reservations at my restaurants sometimes, using different names or having friends make bookings for them. Each time, they're politely turned away. Each time, they learn again that success, like the best meals, is sweetest when earned. They say you can't choose your family, but you can choose how you deal with them. I chose to build an empire they couldn't enter, create success they couldn't claim, and find happiness they couldn't diminish. And every night, I still sit at that table by the kitchen, drinking expensive wine and listening to the symphony of a well-run restaurant. It turns out the best seat in the house was the one they thought was a punishment. Sometimes revenge doesn't need to be cold. Sometimes it just needs to be served with perfect timing, impeccable presentation, and a side of lifetime ban. The glass elevator at Morgan Technologies rose smoothly to the gleaming tower, each floor marking another step toward a moment I'd planned for 2 years. I adjusted my simple gray blazer, purchased from a department store, nothing like the designer suits surrounding me in this corporate cathedral of steel and glass. Going up, a man in an impeccable navy suit stepped in, barely glancing at me. I nodded, letting him assume I was just another low-level employee. If he only knew. My phone buzzed, another text from Marcus, my brother. "Where are you? Remember what we discussed. Stay in the back. Don't draw attention. This is my night." I didn't respond. Instead, I watched the floor numbers climb. 38, 39, 40. The top floor boardroom awaited, where Morgan Technologies would be announcing their new senior vice president of operations. My brother Marcus, the golden child, was about to receive the promotion he'd been bragging about for weeks. Growing up, Marcus had always been our parents' pride and joy. While I'd buried myself in business books and studied late into the night, he charmed his way through life with an easy smile and calculated charisma. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" became the soundtrack of my childhood. When I got accepted to business school, Marcus told everyone I was hiding in academia, while he was making real moves in the corporate world. When I completed my MBA, he dismissed it as just paper compared to his real-world experience. The elevator dinged at the 45th floor. As I stepped out, memories of last month's family dinner surfaced. Sarah's still playing at being a professor, Marcus had announced, cutting into his steak. While I'm about to become the youngest SVP in Morgan Technologies history. Mom beamed at him. We're so proud of you, sweetheart. Some people, she glanced my way, just aren't cut out for the corporate world. Dad nodded sagely. Academic life suits Sarah. Safe, predictable. Not everyone can handle the pressure of real business. I'd said nothing, just smiled and ate my dinner. Let them think what they wanted. They had no idea that while I was hiding in academia, I'd been building something much bigger. Now, walking through the sleek hallways of Morgan Technologies, I felt the weight of the documents in my briefcase. 2 years of careful planning, strategic investments, and quiet negotiations had led to this moment. The boardroom doors loomed ahead. Through the glass, I could see Marcus holding court, his perfectly tailored suit and practiced smile radiating confidence. Our parents sat in the front row, practically glowing with pride. Marcus spotted me and frowned, quickly making his way over. I told you to stay in the back, he hissed. This is my moment. Don't embarrass me by trying to network or whatever you're planning. Don't worry, I said quietly. I'm not here to steal your spotlight. He eyed my simple outfit with disdain. Good. Just try to look professional at least, and don't mention we're related. As he walked away, I checked my watch. Right on schedule, Miranda Chen, the CEO of Morgan Technologies, would be arriving to make the announcement. What Marcus didn't know was that I'd met with Miranda many times over the past year, but not about his promotion. The room quieted as Miranda strode in, commanding attention without effort. She took her place at the podium, shuffling her notes with practiced precision. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, thank you for joining us today. We're here to announce some significant changes at Morgan Technologies. Marcus straightened his tie, ready for his moment. But before we discuss any promotions, Miranda continued, I have an important announcement. As many of you know, I've been searching for the right person to take Morgan Technologies into the future. Someone with vision, integrity, and a deep understanding of where this industry is heading. She paused, scanning the room. Marcus's smile widened. That search led me to someone who impressed me not just with their business acumen, but with their innovative approach to technology and leadership. Someone who quietly built an investment portfolio that includes controlling interests in 3 of our major competitors. Marcus's smile faltered slightly. This wasn't part of his script. Over the past year, this person has been systematically acquiring shares in Morgan Technologies through various investment vehicles. As of this morning, they've succeeded in purchasing a controlling interest in our company. The room broke into confused murmurs. Marcus's face had gone pale. Ladies and gentlemen, Miranda said, please join me in welcoming the new owner and CEO of Morgan Technologies. She turned and extended her hand toward me, Dr. Sarah Mitchell. The silence was absolute as I walked to the podium. Marcus stumbled backward, his carefully planned speech falling from nerveless fingers. In the front row, our parents sat frozen, their expressions a mixture of shock and disbelief. Thank you, Miranda, I said, taking my place at the podium. The documents in my briefcase would wait. Right now, I had a company to address, and a lifetime of underestimation to correct. The boardroom remained frozen in shocked silence as I stood at the podium. Miranda Chen stepped aside, a slight smile playing at her lips. She had kept our secret well, understanding exactly why this moment needed to happen exactly this way. Before we continue, I said, my voice steady, I believe congratulations are in order. Marcus, would you join me up here? My brother's face had turned an interesting shade of gray. He stood rooted to his spot, designer suit suddenly seeming too tight at the collar. Our parents remained motionless in their front row seats, mother's perfectly manicured hands gripping her purse so tightly our knuckles had gone white. Marcus, I repeated, letting authority fill my voice. Please. He moved woodenly toward the podium, each step looking like it physically pained him. The whispers had started now, rippling through the crowd as people connected the dots between our shared last name. As you all know, I continued, Marcus was to be announced as your new Senior Vice President of Operations today. I paused, letting the tension build. That announcement will still be going forward, though with some adjustments. Marcus's head snapped up, hope and confusion warring on his face. Over the past year, I've had the opportunity to review everyone's performance records, including Marcus's. While his sales numbers are impressive, there have been some concerning patterns in his management style and strategic decisions. I opened my briefcase and removed a folder, watching Marcus's eyes track my movements. Specifically, the Harrison account proposal from last quarter. I held up a document, the one where you took credit for Jennifer Torres's work while she was on maternity leave. The color drained from Marcus's face. In the audience, a young woman in a charcoal suit sat out straighter. Or the Stevens Technology merger, I continued, extracting another file, where you conveniently failed to mention the massive pension liability that would come with the acquisition, the liability you discovered during due diligence but chose to hide. That's taken out of context, Marcus stammered, finding his voice. You don't understand how business works in the real world. Sometimes you have to make morally questionable decisions to get ahead. I finished for him. Steal credit from your subordinates. Hide critical information from the board. Our father stood up suddenly. Now see here, he blustered, his face reddening. You can't just walk in here and start making accusations. Marcus has worked his way up through a combination of charm, manipulation, and taking credit for others' work. I cut in. Yes, I know exactly how he's worked his way up. I've spent the last year reviewing every decision, every proposal, every partnership he's been involved with. I turned to address the room at large. Morgan Technologies has an incredible team of dedicated, innovative professionals. People who work hard, support each other, and operate with integrity. Starting today, those are the people who will be recognized and rewarded. My eyes found Jennifer Torres in the crowd. Ms. Torres, I'd like to meet with you tomorrow morning to discuss your actual contributions to the Harrison project and your thoughts on leading the new digital transformation initiative. Jennifer sat up straighter, a slow smile spreading across her face as Marcus seemed to shrink beside me. This is ridiculous. Our mother's voice cut through the room as she stood, designer heels clicking on the hardwood floor. Sarah, you've always been jealous of your brother's success. This little power play of yours. Mrs. Mitchell, Miranda interrupted smoothly. Perhaps we should continue this family discussion privately. The board and I have some organizational announcements to make. I nodded. My office, I said, indicating the large corner office that had been prepared over the past week. Now, as our parents and Marcus followed me into the office, I could hear Miranda beginning to outline the company's new direction to the assembled employees. The heavy door clicked shut behind us, muffling the sound. Have you lost your mind? Marcus exploded the moment we were alone. You can't just walk in here and... I can and I did. I replied calmly, taking my seat behind the desk. I own 51% of Morgan Technologies now. Every decision, every promotion, every strategic move goes through me. How? Our father demanded. Where did you get that kind of money? This company is worth billions. I leaned back in my chair. Remember that silly little consulting firm I started during my hiding in academia phase? Turns out there's good money in helping tech companies optimize their operations and identify acquisition targets. I smiled. Very good money, when you do it right. But you live in that tiny apartment. Our mother protested. You drive a used car. You shop at department stores. Because I was investing everything into building something bigger, I opened my laptop. Now let's discuss Marcus's new position. New position? Marcus sputtered. I'm supposed to be senior vice president. You were, I agreed. But given the pattern of ethical violations I've uncovered, that's no longer appropriate. I pulled up a document on my screen. Instead, you'll be taking a lateral move to our new Minneapolis office as a regional sales manager. The blood drained from Marcus's face. Minneapolis? Sales manager? You can't do this to me. Minneapolis is lovely this time of year, I said mildly. Though I hear the winters are quite cold, you might want to invest in a good coat. Department stores have some excellent options. Our father slammed his hand on my desk. This is outrageous. We'll fight this. The board won't stand for. The board, I cut in, has already approved all personnel changes. They've known about this transition for weeks. Only the three of you were kept in the dark. I stood up, straightening my simple blazer. You have until the end of the day to clear out your office, Marcus. Your flight to Minneapolis leaves tomorrow morning. First class, of course. I'm not completely heartless. And if I refuse? Marcus challenged, though his voice shook slightly. Then you can explain to potential employers why you were terminated for ethical violations. Your choice. I checked my watch. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a company to run. As they filed out of my office, shoulders slumped in defeat, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the window. The simple gray blazer didn't look so plain anymore. It looked exactly like what it was, the outfit of someone who had worked for everything she had, who had earned every step up the ladder. But my day wasn't done yet. Not even close. Because what my family didn't know was that Morgan Technologies was just the beginning. The real changes, the ones that would reshape not just our family dynamic, but the entire industry, were still to come. I picked up my phone and dialed a familiar number. Everything's in place, I said when the line connected. Time for Phase 2. 3 months after taking control of Morgan Technologies, I sat in my office reviewing quarterly reports. The Minneapolis weather update on my screen showed heavy snow. I wondered if Marcus had bought that winter coat yet. A soft knock on my door interrupted my thoughts. Come in, I called, already knowing who it would be. Jennifer Torres entered, carrying a tablet and looking considerably more confident than she had 3 months ago. As the new head of digital transformation, she'd already implemented changes that had increased efficiency by 30%. The Stevens technology audit is complete, she reported, taking a seat. You were right about the pension liability being just the tip of the iceberg. We've uncovered at least a dozen other issues Marcus tried to hide. I nodded, unsurprised. Send me the full report. And Jennifer? Good work. She smiled, the smile of someone who was finally being recognized for their talents. There's something else. Your parents are in the lobby. I glanced at my calendar, though I already knew it was empty. Send them up. While waiting, I opened my desk drawer and removed a thick manila envelope. Inside were documents I'd been preparing for weeks, ever since Phase 2 had begun. My parents entered without knocking. Mom looked thinner, her designer outfit from last season showing signs of wear. Dad's golf tan had faded, and his shoulders stooped slightly. "Sarah," Mom started, her voice carrying forced brightness, "we've been trying to reach you." "I've been busy," I replied coolly. "Running a company takes considerable time. Please sit." They settled into the chairs across from my desk, looking uncomfortable. The silence stretched. "It's about Marcus," Dad finally said. "He's struggling in Minneapolis. His performance reports reflect that." I agreed. "His sales numbers are well below target. He's not used to the cold," Mom interjected quickly. "And that tiny apartment. Nothing like his condo here. Couldn't you find something closer? Maybe a position in the Chicago office?" I leaned back in my chair. "Has Marcus mentioned why his numbers are down?" They exchanged glances. Dad cleared his throat. "He says the clients there are different, more demanding." "They're not different," I said. "They just expect actual results, not empty promises and stolen ideas. Marcus can't coast on charm there because I specifically instructed the regional director to verify all his work." That's harassment," Dad sputtered. "That's accountability," I corrected. "Something Marcus has never had to face before." I opened the manila envelope. "Which brings me to why I've been trying to reach you both as well." Their eyes fixed on the documents I spread across my desk. Property records, bank statements, investment portfolios. When I was reviewing Marcus's financial records, I found some interesting transactions. I continued. "Large transfers from your accounts to his, dating back 5 years. Money that came from mortgaging your house. Twice." Mom's hand flew to her throat. Dad's face paled. "He said it was for investments," Mom whispered. "Special opportunities." "He lost it all," I said quietly. "High-risk trades, failed startups, gambling. The second mortgage payment is due next week. You can't cover it, can you?" Dad's shoulders slumped completely. We were hoping that I would bail you out," I finished. "Like you bailed him out, over and over, while telling me I didn't understand real business." Tears welled in Mom's eyes. "Sarah, please. We'll lose the house." I pulled out another document. "This is a proposal. Morgan Technologies will purchase your house at market value, clearing both mortgages. You can continue living there, paying rent at 30% below market rate." Their eyes widened with hope. "But," I continued, "there are conditions. First, you'll both attend financial management counseling. Second, you will not send any more money to Marcus. And third," I met their eyes firmly, "you will acknowledge, in writing, how you've treated me all these years." "That's blackmail," Dad protested weakly. "That's accountability," I repeated. "Something this family desperately needs." I stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city. "For years, you dismissed my achievements, belittled my choices, poured all your love and resources into Marcus while treating me like an afterthought." I turned back to face them. "That ends now." Mom was crying openly now. Dad stared at his hands. "The choice is yours," I said. "Sign the agreement, keep your home, and maybe we can build something new from the ashes of what this family has become. Or don't sign, lose the house, and continue enabling Marcus's destructive behavior." I placed a pen on the desk between them. "But understand this. I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing this because sometimes love means forcing people to face hard truths. The silence stretched for a long moment. Then slowly, Dad reached for the pen. As they signed, my phone buzzed with a text from Minneapolis. Marcus had finally hit rock bottom, admitting to his regional director that he needed help. I'd already arranged for him to enter a program that would address his gambling addiction and teach him actual business ethics. Looking at my parents, I saw something I'd never seen before in their eyes when they looked at me. Respect. And maybe, just maybe, the beginning of understanding. "The car will take you home," I said, pressing a button to summon my driver. "The counselor will contact you tomorrow to set up your first session." They stood, looking somehow both smaller and lighter than when they'd entered. "Sarah." Mom paused at the door. "I'm sorry. For everything." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. After they left, I sank back into my chair and finally let out a long breath. Phase 2 was complete. The family that had dismissed me for so long was finally seeing me clearly, not just as a successful businesswoman, but as someone strong enough to help them face their own failures. Jennifer knocked again, entering with a fresh stack of reports. "The board meeting starts in 10 minutes. They're eager to hear about the new expansion plans." I smiled, gathering my materials. Time to focus on the future, not just of Morgan Technologies, but of all the people who worked here. People like Jennifer, who deserved their chance to shine. As I walked into the boardroom, I caught my reflection in the window. The simple gray blazer was gone, replaced by one I'd chosen for myself. Not designer, not flashy, but perfectly suited to who I was. Someone who had built success on substance rather than style. The board members rose as I entered. They'd learned quickly that I was nothing like my brother, and everything a leader should be. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, "let's talk about where we're going next. Because success, real success, isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right." And I was just getting started. The glass elevator at Morgan Technologies rose smoothly through the gleaming tower, each floor marking another step toward a moment I'd planned for 2 years. I adjusted my simple gray blazer, purchased from a department store, nothing like the designer suits surrounding me.